Lahat tayo may pangarap para sa bayan. Pero, paano natin tututuparin? Maging non-profit volunteer sa araw ng halalan at sama-sama natin tuparin ang pangarap sa bayan. Bantayan ng boto, bantayan ang bayan. Dahil tayo ay bantay ng bayan.
Hi! Magandang araw sa inyo lahat. Ako nga pala si Emmanuel Sakay, galing sa Angono, Rizal. Ako ay non-profit volunteer ng Rizal Province Chapter. Nagsimula ako sa non-profit noong 1998. Noong panahon na estudyante pa lang ako, actually hindi pa nga ako botante nung time na yun eh. Pero nasabak ako sa NAMFREL dahil sa isang activity sa simbahan na kung saan magbabantay sa eleksyon. At dahil dito, nakilala ko ang NAMFREL. Sumali ako sa NAMFREL sa totoo lang dahil sa paniniwala na marami ako matututunan dito. Marami akong makikitang mga tao, makikilalang mga kaibigan, at may experience na alam kong makakatulong ako sa bayan. Alam kong makakakontribute ako sa pag-unlad ng bayan. Actually, simula noong 2001, isa sa mga hindi ko makakalimutan talaga yung first time ako makamit ng mga totoong politiko. Kasi yung mga politiko, madalas nagkakampanya sa TV lang, sa poster. Pag nasa NAMFREL ka, makikita mo sila in person. Eh, ganun yung experience ko. Simula noong nag-volunteer ako sa Operation Quick Count ng NAMFREL, parang ordinaryong tao na lang din ang tingin ko sa kanila kasi harap-harapan mo sila makikita eh. Kaya yan ang experience sa NAMFREL. Kapag kayo ay nag-volunteer sa NAMFREL, maaaring ganun din yung maramdaman ninyo. Siyempre, alam nyo dito sa NAMFREL, dito mo matututunan na maging non-partisan, yung wala kang kikilingan kahit sino. Na kaya mong magsalita, na kaya mong mag-express ng opinion, hindi ka magiging bias. Dito sa NAMFREL, natutunan ko kung paanong maging non-partisan. Kaya kayong mga naririyan na nakikinig at nanonood, I encourage you and I invite you to join NAMFREL. Sign up for NAMFREL dahil dito sa NAMFREL, mas marami kayong may experience, marami kayong matututunan, at ang magagawa ninyo para sa bayan sa pamamagitan ng NAMFREL ay very exceptional. Bantayan ng boto, bantayan ng bayan.
like Christ and live in His Spirit. In the footsteps of John Baptist, tell us all. Christ our brother, who loves us all, calls us to follow Him and sends all to serve all. My brother, I tell you, this is our faithful response to Jesus Christ's invitation. Yes to the call of God, bear witness to the love of Christ, respond to the inspiration of the Spirit. Yes, heed the call, live as disciples of Christ, discover where your yes road can lead you. When you discern the brother's life, we form and guide you. We walk with you side by side. We share one passion, one purpose and identity. Feel the belonging and solidarity. We tell us our brothers, this is our faithful response to Jesus Christ's invitation. Yes to the call of God, bear witness to the love of Christ, respond to the inspiration of the Spirit. Yes, heed the call, live as disciples of Christ, discover where your yes road can lead you. Our mission has always been to give human and Christian education, inspiring more and more Lasallians to recognize God's Spirit in the lives. To the call of God, bear witness to the love of Christ, respond to the inspiration of the Spirit. Yes, heed the call, live as disciples of Christ, discover where your yes road can lead you. Bear witness to the love of Christ, respond to the inspiration of the Spirit. Yes, heed the call, live as disciples of Christ, discover where your yes road can lead you. Discover where your yes road can lead you.
Ang pagboto ng mamamayan ay higit pa sa isang oportunidad na maihayag ang ating tinig. Ang pagboto ng mamamayan ay isang karapatan na hindi dapat masayang. Maging NAFREL volunteer para ipaglaban ang ating karapatan at tinig. Bantayan ng boto, bantayan ng bayan.
Magandang araw, ako si Caroydinio. Invite namin kayo na maging part ng Tamang Kandidato campaign. Ang Tamang Kandidato ay voter education program na tumutulong na maging maingat at discerning ang mga Pilipino sa pagpili ng kandidato sa eleksyon. Pansin niyo ba na maraming Pilipino ang attracted sa magagandang pangako ng mga kandidato? Marami ang halos hindi na nag-iisip. Tumataya na lang sa sikat o umaayon na lang sa gusto ng iba o kung sino ang malaki ang bigay. Pero sa huli, korap pala ang politiko. Napapako na ang pangako, ninanakawan pa ang kaban ng bayan. Sa tamang kandidato, binibigyan natin ng emphasis ang values sa pagpili ng kandidato. Sa pamamagitan ng personal reflection at mga group discussion, encourage tayo na pumili ayon sa ating mga values bilang mga Pilipino at ayon sa ating faith sa Diyos. Dahil dito nagkakaroon ng pagbabago sa pagpili ng kandidato na mas tapat sa kalooban ng Diyos. Subok na ito noong 2019 at nakapartner natin ang maraming churches, faith-based organizations, educational institutions at maging mga private companies sa Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao. Ayon sa journalist na si John Neri, ang tamang kandidato daw ay ang best na voter education program na nakita niya. Gusto naming lumawak ang reach ng tamang kandidato campaign sa online learning at social media at kailangan namin ng tulong ninyo. Kung kayo ay church or eskwelahan or community organization o kahit private company at gusto ninyo magkaroon ng voter education sa grupo ninyo, mag-partner po tayo. Kung kayo ay may experience sa pag-facilitate ng small groups or mag-host ng school or church events, kung may experience kayo sa training, pwede kayong maging accredited facilitator ng tamang kandidato. Kung marunong kayong magsulat o magaling sa graphic design or sanay sa pag-produce ng video o kaya ay mahusay sa social media management, pwede tayo magtulungan para sa social media campaign ng Tamang Kandidato program. Message nyo kami sa Tamang Kandidato Facebook page or email nyo kami sa tamaka2022@gmail.com.
Sa darating na Mayo, higit sa 67 milyong tao ang pipili ng iboboto. Sa pipiliin mo, sa pipiliin ko. Hawak ng bawat isang boto ang kinabukasan ng bawat isang Pilipino. Inihandog ng De La Salle University Committee on National Issues and Concerns. Participate, La Salle Institute of Governance. At Youth-Led, in partnership with the Lasallian Justice and Peace Commission, Ateneo School of Government through the Ateneo Policy Center, and Rappler. Ang pili mo, pili ko, Pilipino. Voter Conversation Series, the Youth Vote 2022 Vice Presidential Forum. Inaanyayahan ang lahat na magsitayo para sa isang maikling panalangin na susundan ng pambansang awit ng Republika ng Pilipinas.
Let me be the change I want to see, to do with strength and wisdom all that needs to be done, and become the hope that I can be. Set me free from my fears and hesitations. Grant me courage and humility. Fill me with spirit to face the challenge and start the change I long to see. Today I start the change I want to see. Even if I'm not the light, I can be the spark in faith, service, and communion. Let us start the change we want to see, the change that begins in me. Today I start the change I want to see. Even if I'm not the light, I can be the spark. Faith, service, and communion. Let us start the change we want to see, the change that begins in me. In Jesus, in Jesus, in
Bayang magiliw, kalas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa libing mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupig, di ka pasisiling. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong mukha, may dilagang tula at awit sa paglayang hinamahal. Ang isang ng mataw at mo'y tagumpay na nalilinig. Ang bituin na araw na kailan pa may magdidiling. Lupa ng araw na walang ipagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Aming higaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Magsiupo na po ang lahat. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Ako si Audrey Garin, Co-Director for National and Civic Affairs of the Office of the President, De La Salle University Student Government.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Ako naman si Jules Giang ng Rappler. Hi, Audrey.
Hello, Jules.
And hello po sa inyong lahat. And please join me in welcoming on stage to formally open our forum, the President of De La Salle University Student Government, Ms. Maria Georgina C. Escoto.
Sa ating mga De La Salle brothers, sa mga vice presidential candidates, sa mga youth groups, mga universidad, sa mga kapwa ko mag-aaral at sa buong Pilipinas. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Georgina Escoto, ang Pangulo ng University Student Government ng Pamantasang De La Salle. Ikinagagalak ko po ang pagdalo ninyong lahat sa Youth 2022 Vice Presidential Forum dito sa aming universidad. Sa loob ng mahigit isang dekada mula itatag ito, ang USG ay nananatiling tumitindig sa pagdepensa sa demokrasya ng ating bansa. Isa sa mga aming inspirasyon ang pagkakaroon ng progresibong lipunan para sa lahat ng Pilipino. Gusto naming isabuhay ang pagiging mga Lasalliano para sa Panginoon at para sa ating bayan. Kaya naman ang araw na ito ay napakahalaga, hindi lamang para sa aming mga mag-aaral, kung hindi para na rin sa buong Pilipinas. Mauukit ang araw na ito sa kasaysayan ng aming pamantasan dahil may oportunidad tayong makinig at mapakinggan ng iilan sa mga nagnanais na umupo bilang ating susunod na pangalawang Pangulo. Ang Youth 2022 Vice Presidential Forum ay nagsimula bilang isang pangarap. Hindi biro ang mag-organisa ng proyektong kasing laki nito. Ngunit ang tunay na aming hinahabol ay ang mga malalalim na diskurso tungkol sa mga importanteng issue ng ating lipunan na dapat lamang mapag-usapan. Bilang miyembro ng sektor ng kabataan, dapat lamang na ang ating mga hinaing ay dinggin ng mga kandidatong gusto tayong pamunuan. Gusto ng kabataan ang maayos na pamumuno. Sa nakaraang mga taon, lalo na nang nagkaroon ng pandemya, nakita at naranasan namin ang hirap ng buhay at ang napakaraming suliranin ng ating lipunan. Marami ang nagising sa katotohanan na hindi tayo uunlad kung hindi natin sisimulan ang tunay na pagbabago sa pamamagitan ng tapat at totoong pamumuno. Isang pamumuno na inuuna ang kapakanan ng nakararami. Kung ang kabataan ang pag-asa ng bayan, kailangan ng kabataan ng isang pamumunong tutugon sa tawag ng panahon. At ang tawag ng panahon ay ito. Oras na para sa isang malinis na gobyerno. Oras na para sa totoong serbisyong pampubliko na hindi korap o manloloko. Ngunit katulad ng forum na ito, para sa nakararami, nananatili itong isang pangarap. Mananatili itong pangarap kung ang iluluklok natin sa pwesto ay may mga katangiang salungat sa mga prinsipyong nasa ating konstitusyon. Kaya naman, dapat siguraduhin natin na ngayong eleksyon, ang katotohanan, katarungan, pagmamahal, at kapayapaan ang mananaig. Tayo ang pag-asa ng ating minamahal na bansa. Sa pagboto ng tama, ang ating mga pangarap ay magiging realidad. Ang aking hiling ay sana ang ating pangarap ay hindi para sa ating mga sarili lamang. Isipin natin ang kabataan, ang mga mahihirap, ang mga matagal nang hindi napapakinggan. Ngayong araw tayo ay maging mapanuri. 31 araw na lamang at araw na ng halalan. Ating pagnilayan ang ating magiging desisyon dahil para ito sa 100 at 9 milyong Pilipino. Sa ngalan ng pagkakaisa, ang mga estudyante at sa ngalan ng pagkakaisa para sa bayan, ito ang Youth 2022 Vice Presidential Forum. Magandang hapon po muli at Animo Lasal.
Wow, nice words. Thank you so much, President George, for that heartwarming welcome. Again, palakpakan po natin siya.
Ayan, maraming salamat. At syempre, hello po sa inyong lahat na nanonood syempre dito sa ating venue at syempre maging sa lahat ng mga nanonood sa ating online. Hello po sa napakaraming mga kabataan at representatives mula sa iba't ibang sektor na nandito ngayon sa Henry C. Grounds. Good afternoon to all of you.
Magandang hapon po sa inyo lahat. Jules, galing pa ang marami sa kanila sa iba't ibang schools from all over the Philippines, ha? Shout out sa mga taga-UP school system. Meron po ba tayo dito? There you go. Taga-UE. From UE. Welcome po. From CEU. Welcome to DLSU. From Enderon. From CLSU. From Ateneo. At syempre, LaSalle Schools. Nandito rin, Jules, ang ating Kabataan Party List Street to School. National Union of Students in the Philippines. And She Decides PH. Thank you for coming, guys.
Alright, thank you so much. Pero Audrey, mas marami pa sa mga nandito ngayon ang kasama rin natin dahil may mga viewers din tayo online. This forum is streaming live on the social media pages, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook page ng Rappler, ang ating media partner.
Nice. So sa mga viewers online, feel free to send us your feedback, your questions, and your insights through the comment sections. So sa lahat ng viewers dito man o online, welcome po sa inyong lahat at salamat sa inyong pagdalo dito sa ating Pili Mo, Pili Ko, Pilipino Voter Conversation Series, the Youth Vote 2022 Vice Presidential Forum. So Jules, kaunting background muna tayo. Ang Pili Mo, Pili Ko, Pilipino Voter Conversation Series ay dalawang forums organized by the De La Salle University Committee on National Issues and Concerns at ng Lasallian Justice and Peace Commission in partnership with Rappler at ng iba pang mga organization.
That's right, Audrey. Kung makikita natin sa ating screen, no, yung first forum natin naganap nito lamang nakaraang April 6. Okay, that was 2 days ago. Doon po ay nakausap natin ang mga mayoral candidates ng City of Manila, mga constituents at syempre mga stakeholders ng ating lungsod.
But our forum today is the second forum. Also, the culminating activity of the Youth Choose for 2022, Youth Caravan and Voter Empowerment Metro Manila Leg. At sa forum natin ngayon, tutuon naman tayo ng pansin sa national election.
Tama, Audrey. At syempre, ang makakasama naman natin ngayon ay ang mga candidates para sa ikalawang pinakamataas na posisyon sa gobyerno, ang ating magiging Vice President.
Jules, tulad ng unang forum, ang goal ng forum natin ngayon ay ang magbigay ng safe space for a peaceful, honest, and substantial dialogue between candidates and their possible future constituents.
Of course, we hope that through active participation sa dialogue na ito, matutulungan natin ang ating mga viewers at ang buong Pilipinas na magkaroon ng sapat na impormasyon para makapag-isip at makapagdesisyon tungkol sa kung sino ang iboboto sa halalan 2022.
Tama yan. Pero Jules, napansin mo ba, yung title natin, may nakadikit na Youth Vote 2022.
Oo nga eh.
Alam mo bang bakit?
Bakit?
Ito kasi yung special sa forum natin ngayon. Here, we will tackle relevant and important national issues ayon sa point of view o pananaw nating mga kabataan. So yes, Jules, kasama
Nating
tayo
mga
nun.
kabataan.
Yes, kasama
12
tayo.
days na lang hindi na ako kabataan. Pero
May
nandito si
pag-
Kong Sara Ilagos. I guess
Ayun
kabataan pa rin tayo.
May pag-reveal tayo ng age.
Of course, Audrey, but alam mo kung bakit napakahalaga ang forum na tulad nito para sa ating mga kabataan?
Bakit?
Bakit? Dahil 56% ng voting population natin ngayong 2022 ay binubuo nating mga kabataan.
Yes, nating mga kabataan. That's more than half of the voting population. So this means that this election carries with it the youth's voice, our wants, our needs, our dreams and aspirations for our future and for the future of this country.
That's right. It is now not only important but imperative that the youth be armed with all the knowledge and understanding that they could get about the upcoming elections. Halalan 2022 is the youth's vote.
Definitely. Kaya talagang super excited na ako, Jules. Umpisa na natin ang Pili Mo, Pili Ko, Pilipino, the Youth Vote 2022 Vice Presidential Forum.
Alright, ayon sa ating konstitusyon, ang pinakamahalagang mandate ng Vice President ng Pilipinas ay ang humalili bilang President sa pagkakataong mamatay, magkaroon ng malubhang sakit, matanggal sa posisyon o magbitiw ang kasulukuyang Pangulo. Maaari rin siyang humawak ng posisyon sa gabinete ng Pangulo kung ito ay iaalok sa kanya.
Kaso unfortunately, no, Jules, 4 lang sa siyam na vice presidentiable ang makakasama natin ngayon dito sa forum. Pero bibigyan natin sila ng tig 2 minutes for their introductions.
Ito na, para ipakilala ang kanilang mga sarili sa kabataang Filipino, ang mga kandidato sa pagka-vice-presidente ng Republika ng Pilipinas. Candidates, the podium is yours.
Professor Walden Bello. You may introduce yourself.
Magandang hapon ho sa inyong lahat at maraming salamat sa De La Salle University and all the other sponsors. I'm very happy to be here. Animo La Salle. Ako ho ay dating kinatawan sa mababang kapulungan ng ating Kongreso. At ako ho ay nag-serve from 2009 to 2015. Ako ho ay ang chairman ngayon ng Coalition Laban ng Masa at tumatakbo ho akong vice-presidente under the Partido Lakas ng Masa. Makasaysayan ho itong ating halalan na darating kasi one, this is the first time that somebody from the working class, si Leode de Guzman, is running for president. Let's give a cheer for Leode de Guzman. Secondly, meron ho the first time that we have candidates and a whole party that's running under the platform of democratic socialism. And why am I running for office? Because I think it is time to present the people and the youth with real programs for change. Hindi na lang mga motherhood statements, all those vacuous statements that politicians come up with. I am not a politician. I am an activist, and I'm very happy to be an activist. And we are going to present real analysis of the situation in our country at this point, and because of those real radical solutions to them. So thank you very much for inviting me here today.
Up next, tinatawagan naman natin, Ginoong Rizalito David.
Isang mapagpalang hapon po sa lahat ng naririto, lalong-lalo na dun sa ating mga kaibigan sa Lasal. Napakasarap na parating mapunta dito. Iba yung atmosphere ng Lasal. Ako po si Rizalito David, na tumatakbo bilang ikalawang Pangulo under the Democratic Party of the Philippines. Ako po'y pinanganak sa Tondo, Maynila. Nag-aral sa Isabelo de los Reyes. Nag-high school sa Jose Abad Santos High School, sa Binondo. Nabigyan ng konting talino, nakapasa sa UP, nabigyan ng scholarship, nakapag-aral doon, naging chairman ng University Student Council sa UP Los Baños, nakapagturo, naging teacher ako sa pamantasan ng Pilipinas, at nagtrabaho rin ako sa executive department bilang isang senior staff, nung panahon na ako'y bata pa. At matapos noon I joined the Senate and served as head executive assistant to 2 successive senators. Pretty much yung aking pinanggalingan, Tondo. Yung kahirapan nakita ko, kinakain ko sa umaga, kinakain sa tanghali, kinakain sa gabi. Maging nung ako'y nasa pamantasan na, damang-dama ko pa rin yung kahirapan. Nabuhay ako sa ganong panahon ng martial law. Nakita ko kung gaano ang hirap ng ating mga mamamayan. Kaya pretty much lahat ng aking itinataguyod ngayon ay dahil dun sa karanasan kong naranasan nung ako'y bata, yung kahirapan na nakita ko sa ating mga mamamayan. At ako'y nananatiling nagsisilbi sa ating bayan, lalong-lalo na sa mga kababayan nating mahihirap. Maraming salamat po.
Susunod po, Mr. Manny S.D. Lopez.
Good afternoon. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. To my fellow students, I was once young like yourselves and committed in advancing the national interest and welfare of our people. I was once a chairman of the Lakas ng Bansa Youth way back in 1987. And just like you, I helped organize different political forums and activities in the hope of making our country a better country and help make lives of our people. Ako po ay isang naging student leader din, katulad nyo. I am now a semi-retired economist and a management and technology professional. I graduated from the University of the Philippines, pursued postgraduate studies at the University of California in Los Angeles, and pursued Juris Doctoral Studies at the Pacific Coast University School of Law in Long Beach. I also was awarded an associate program in business law. And so, my friends, my fellow students, let us help fix the problems of this country, and we could do so by choosing the best, most qualified, and most committed leaders in the national and local governments, and it is you, the young people of this country, who could make a difference and who could make things happen. Maraming salamat po, and have a pleasant day.
Ngayon naman tinatawagan natin, Attorney Carlos Serapio.
Walhati po sa Ama, sa Anak, at sa Diyos Espiritu Santo. Maraming salamat, Lasal, for having us here. Ako po si Carlos G. Serapio, taga Bulacan. Mula po sa bayan ng Ubando at gayon din sa bayan ng Bayumbong, Nueva Vizcaya at Ilocos Sur. Doon po nanggaling ang aking ama at ina. Ako po ay nagtapos ng AB Political Science sa Ateneo at gayon din naman nag-aral ng aking batas sa pamantasan ng Pilipinas. Nagkaroon din ng pagkakataon mag-aral ng maikling kurso sa Sangamon College, University of Illinois at gayon din at iba pang mga pagkakataon na ako'y nabigyan ng pagsasanay sa ibang bansa tulad ng Japan at saka sa Singapore. Ako po ay naging consultant ng halos ng 5 na presidente ng ating bansa. At bilang consultant, ang aking po napagtuunan ay ang politika at gayon din po ay ang tungkol sa saligang batas o konstitusyon. Ako ay nakapagturo rin po ng political science at mga social sciences sa Asian Institute of Management, sa St. Teresa's at saka sa St. Joseph. Ngayon po, bukod doon sa mga karanasan ko pong iyon, nung ako po ay estudyante, I was the Vice Chairman of the Archdiocese of Manila, Student Catholic Action, and the Secretary General of the Student Catholic Action all over the country. Ang akin po nararamdaman sa ngayon ay nagbabalik ako sa pamantasan kung saan nakikita ko ang mga pangarap po ng ating mga kabataan. You have heard this so many times, you've been told several times over that you are the hope of the motherland. But that hope is founded on faith and at the same time on the other virtue of love. Something that we will share to you later on as we expound to you our dreams and aspirations, our vision for our country. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat.
Thank you so much, sirs. Samantala po, nag-agree ang mga organizers ng forum at ang mga candidates na nandito, nabigyan naman ng chance yung mga hindi nakarating to give statements through pre-recorded videos.
Kaya naman narito na po ang introduction ni Congressman Lito Atienza.
Mabuhay and good morning to you all. I congratulate the LaSalle student body for organizing this forum, because you have to know your candidates. You have to study what they represent. Whom you vote for is very important, because for the next 6 years, they will be controlling our lives again. We vote right, we have a better life. We vote not correctly, we may suffer again for the next 6 years. Anyway, today I am very happy to be one of those who's reaching out to you on the relevance, importance of the youth in this election. You comprise the greater majority of our people. The youth comprise about 70, 80% of our electorate. So we must vote right. You must consider your future. Do you know that the future is for the youth today? Then your time will come to benefit from whatever you invest in now, or suffer through the failure of Philippine government again. God gave us everything. God so loved the Filipinos. He gave us a land full of natural wealth. Do you know that the Philippines has one of the most minerals, natural minerals, in the whole world? We are number 1 in many natural minerals, number 5 in gold. We have so much gold. So why is it that Filipinos, in spite of everything that God has given us, remain to be dirt poor? That's the question we must answer. And I've answered that a long time ago when I was handling the Department of Natural Resources. I saw how the rich have abused the gift of God.
At ito naman ang introduction ni Senator Kiko Pangilinan.
Nandito na si Kiko Pangilinan.
Mahalaga para sa akin ang kabataan dahil kahit noon pa man, sa panahon ng ating mga bayani na sina Jose Rizal, Graciano Lopez Haina, ang kabataan ang bitsa ng pagbabago. Yung mga kamag-anak nga ni Graciano Lopez Haina, inendorso na kami ni Vice President Lenny. Tulad nyo nung ako'y bata pa at hindi pa puti ang buhok, ay isa rin ako sa mga kabataan sa UP na nakikiisa para maitaguyod muli ang demokrasya noong 1986. At naging tapat ako sa mga tungkulin kong magsilbi sa sambayanang Pilipino. Bukod sa mga batas para sa ating magsasaka at mangingisda, tulad ng Sagip-Saka Act at ang Coconut Farmers and Industry Trust Fund Act na ako ang principal author. Meron din akong mga ginawa para sa kapakanan ng kabataan. Ang National Service Training Program Act na pinasa noong bagong-bago akong senador noong 2001, pinalit natin itong NSTP sa mandatory ROTC dahil sa corruption at nauwi pa sa pagpatay ng isang kadete. Hindi tayo payag sa mandatory military training. Mas marami pang ibang prioridad na dapat bigyan ng tuon. Sa Senado, isinusulong din natin ang batas na college graduate sa bawat pamilya. Di lamang libre sa tuition, kundi pati allowances, lodging, pamasahe, pagkain, at iba pa. Layon natin na iangat ang buhay ng ating mga mag-aaral, lalong-lalo na yung nasa laylayan. Dahil naniniwala tayo sa sinabi ni Nelson Mandela, and I quote, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." Ako rin ay isang Lasallian tulad ninyo, Animo Lasal. Nag-aral sa Lasal Green Hills ng elementary at high school bago pumasok sa UP. Gamitin natin sa tama ang edukasyon na tinatamasa natin sa Lasal upang baguhin ang ating mundo tungo sa gobyernong tapat na mag-aangat sa buhay ng lahat.
Maraming salamat po sa pagpapaunlak ninyo sa aming imbitasyon. Muli po palakpakan natin ang ating mga vice presidential candidates. And again, welcome to Pili Mo, Pili Ko, Pilipino, the Youth Vote 2022 Vice Presidential Forum. Magandang hapon po muli sa ating lahat at maraming salamat sa inyong pagdalo. Para sa kaalaman ng lahat, magkakaroon ng 3 parts ang ating forum. Briefly, sa first part ay tatawagin nating Kabataan 2022. Pag-uusapan natin ang pagtingin, pagsuri at pag-unawa ng ating mga kandidato sa kasalukuyang kalagayan nating mga kabataan, kaugnay ng mga national issues na mahalaga para sa atin.
Dito ay bibigyan natin ang bawat kandidato ng 2 minutes to share their views. Then we'll give 1 minute to any of the candidates para magtanong or magbigay ng reaksyon sa kapwa kandidato. Meron ding 1 minute para sumagot.
Sa part 2, ang hashtag 40s o top 10 trending topics. Pag-uusapan naman natin ang stand ng bawat kandidato sa mga napapanahong issues na trending sa social media ngayong election season. Ang mga issues na ibibigay ay maaari lang sagutin ng oo o hindi. Pero bibigyan ng chance ang ilan sa mga kandidato na ipaliwanag ang sagot nila sa loob ng 1 minuto.
Sa part 3 naman, Jules, natatawagin nating mga kabataan awit ay isang open forum. Bukas para magtanong, magbigay ng reaksyon o obserbasyon ng lahat ng kabataang nandito sa ating venue. Ang mga nanonood rin sa Rappler through the comment section. At Jules, meron din tayong mga kabataang nagpadala ng videos ng mga katanungan nila for our candidates.
Tama, Audrey. And throughout the forum, hihilingin naman natin sa bawat magsasalita na maging mindful po sa nakatakda nilang oras. Makikita nyo po sa ating harapan na meron tayong timer para maipaalala sa inyo ang natitira nyo pang oras. And unfortunately, we would have to turn off your mics kapag time's up na.
Remember po, we need to turn off your mics kapag time's up na po. We would also like to ask each candidate and even our audience to refrain from interrupting and disrupting whoever is speaking. Lubos na respeto po ang ibigay sana natin sa isa't isa. Maraming salamat po.
Kaya Audrey, simulan na natin ang part 1 ng ating forum, ang Kabataan 2022. Tulad ng nabanggit, dito ay pag-uusapan natin ang pagtingin, pagsuri at pag-unawa ng ating mga kandidato tungkol sa current state nating mga kabataan. Para dito, naghanda kami ng isang video presentation. Roll VTR.
Pandemials. Ito ang katawagang ibinigay ng World Economic Forum sa kanilang Global Risk Report noong 2021 para sa mga kabataan ng kasalukuyang henerasyon. Ito'y dahil nabubuhay sila sa isang panahon na bawas ang oportunidad para sa mga kabataan at walang katiyakan ang kanilang kinabukasan. Dito sa Pilipinas, libo-libong kabataan ang napilitang tumigil sa pag-aaral nitong nakaraang 2 taon dahil walang kakayahan at kapasidad para sa online learning. Ang mga nakapag-aral naman ay napapatanong kung sapat nga ba ang kanilang mga natututunan para sa pinapangarap nilang propesyon. At kung sapat man ito, meron ba silang trabahong dadatnan makapagtapos man sila ng kolehiyo at makakasabay nga ba ang kanilang mga kakayahan para umunlad ang anumang propesyon na papasukin nila? Nahaharap din ang mga kabataan ng kasalukuyang henerasyon sa isang mundong halos paubos na ang likas na yaman, dulot ng pang-aabuso at pagkasira ng ating kalikasan, biktima ng karahasan sa nagpapatuloy na drug war, krisis sa kalusugan dahil sa COVID-19, mental health crisis sa dalang trauma at social disruption ng pandemya, diskriminasyon, pagsupil sa academic freedom at paglaganap ng disinformation na tumitibag sa kakayahan nilang bumuo ng kritikal na pananaw. Kabi-kabila at mapanganib na akusasyon sakaling matuto silang magpahayag at kumilos. Teenage pregnancies at child, early and forced marriages at marami pang iba. Sunod-sunod at patong-patong ang krisis na hinaharap ng ating mga kabataan. Ang pag-asa nga ba ng bayan ay wala ng bukas na maaasahan.
Ayan, Audrey, wow, real talk kung real talk yung natunghayan natin sa video. Kasi talaga namang we can't really deny na sobrang daming mga krisis yung pinagdaanan nating mga kabataan ngayong pandemya. So sa ating mga vice presidential candidates po na nandito, we would like to know, as potential vice president of this country, ano ang inyong sariling pagtingin at pagkilala sa aming mga kabataan ngayon?
Dagdag pa po rito, no? Ano yung sarili ninyong pagsusuri sa kasalukuyan naming kalagayan? And what will be your plans and actions para po ma-address ang aming mga pangangailangan at mabigyan kami ng magandang kinabukasan?
Please remember po na you only have 2 minutes each to answer these questions. In alphabetical order, mag-umpisa po tayo kay Prof. Walden Bello.
Okay, Can you hear me? Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat. Alam mo nyo, yung krisis na tambak-tambak ng kabataan, sumasang-ayon ho ako roon. Pero sa tingin ko ho, pinalubha lang ng pandemya yung mga krisis na naroroon na. At yung krisis na walang respeto para sa karapatang pantao, yung krisis ng edukasyon na hindi tumutugma sa mga kailangan ng ating mga kabataan, yung ekonomiya na wala hong mga trabahong naghihintay para sa ating mga kabataan, at yung krisis ng kalikasan, lalo na ho yung climate change. So, intersectional ho lahat itong mga krisis na ito. At sa tingin ko, kailangan ho talaga ng isang solusyon o analysis na radikal at mga solusyon rin na radikal. At sa tingin ko namin, yung mga malalaking problema ng ating bansa ay nanggagaling ho sa di pagkapantay-pantay, gross inequality, at galing rin ho ito sa todo-todong pagbubukas na ekonomiya na nagsira ng mga trabaho rito sa atin. Kaya ho, a lot of our people have been forced just to go abroad in search of work. And also, I think mahalaga rin ho yung loss of vision for the future. Yun ho ang kailangan ho ngayon, a vision for the future that people can really strive for. And I think that is why I am running for office, to try to promote a vision of the future that rests on what we call democratic socialism for the people.
Maraming salamat po. Ngayon naman, Mr. Rizalito David.
Isang magandang hapon po muli. Nais kong isantabi yung mga naging krisis. Nais kong mag-umpisa tayo from scratch. Pag-usapan natin ano ang nais ng kabataan para sa kanilang kinabukasan. Let's forge this together. Kasi kung babalikan na natin ang babalikan yung mga nangyaring krisis, parati tayong matatali doon. Pag-usapan natin ano ang inyong nais para sa inyong kinabukasan. Doon tayo mag-umpisa. At alam ko naman na ang mga kabataan ay may angking talino. Meron silang kakayanan na mag-isip. Base na rin sa kanilang mga karanasan at natutunan sa kanilang pag-aaral. At doon magmumula yung magiging solusyon ng gobyerno na kung saan kung ako man ay papalari na maging vice-presidente, ay aking itutulak. Manggagaling sa inyo ang solusyon, hindi sa amin. Dahil kayo ang nakakaramdam ng mga bagay na malaki ang impact sa inyong mga buhay. Pretty much yun ang aking nais bigyan ng pansin. At ikalawa, nais ko pa rin sabihin sa mga kabataan na huwag nating kalimutan na ang pinakaimportanteng bagay sa ating lipunan ay ang kanyang moralidad. Dahil kahit paano ang ating galing, kung kakalimutan natin ang ating pananampalataya sa Diyos, kakalimutan natin yung ethical and spiritual imperative sa ating mga buhay, walang mangyayari sa ating lipunan. Yun ang aking nais bigyan ng pansin. At ang kasagutan ay manggagaling sa inyo at hindi sa amin. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat po. Up next, we have Mr. Manny Lopez.
Thank you very much, Jules. To be frank and honest about it, I don't see a bright future for our country and for the Filipino youth under the present system of governance, under the present ways on how we do things, from business to other human endeavors. And it is for this reason why I considered running for the vice president of this country. We need to fix this country. We are facing tremendous challenges. We are facing issues of biblical proportions. And accordingly, we have to come up with solutions that will address these problems that we will be facing in the years to come. As a former student leader, I tried my best to extend whatever little means that I have to help effect change and reform in this country. But I was not successful. Although my failure as a young man to contribute significantly to this prospect of change and reform has gained new foresight, a new vision, a new mission under the labor government principles and leadership best practices. And I believe that by imparting the message, the need for real change and reform, we could fix the problems of our nation and find better solutions that will give our youth a better future and build a better nation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Last but not the least, Attorney Carlos Serapio.
Yes, thank you. First of all, we'll have to contextualize the issues, concerns, as well as challenges which were presented in the video. The youth of today must have some kind of a worldview and at the same time also be equipped with the philosophy of change. When I say worldview, we have to grapple with the reality that the world as it is really changing. The pandemic is just part of that kind of change that is happening in our environment. The kind of jobs that the youth of today will need to prepare themselves for, the kind of other challenges that are obtaining in our present situation, all of this need to be framed in a new way of looking at things. And if you have a philosophy of change, meaning the young, and you understand that the basis of change is always internal and the condition of change is external. All those challenges are external conditions. The question is, how are you going to prepare yourselves to respond to it? In our generation, the external condition that we tried to respond to was the condition of social injustice. And that is the reason why you had student activists during that time. But why did we fail? We failed because we were not able to come up with a common understanding of our situation and how we as a people, the young in particular, should serve as the catalyst in bringing about that kind of change. If you do things the same thing over and over again, we will not really succeed. That will be an insane process. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po sa inyong mga sagot. Ngayon naman po, binubuksan natin ang talakayan para sa kung sino man po sa inyo, sa ating mga candidates, ang mayroong katanungan, reaksyon o insight sa mga ipinahayag ng inyong kapwa-kandidato.
So raise your hand lang po tayo if you want to speak. Tandaan rin po natin na meron lang kayong 1 minuto para magtanong at may 1 minuto lang din po kayo para sumagot.
Okay, simulan natin. Sir David, go ahead po.
Maganda sana kung kompleto tayo dito, no? Yung mga nangungunang kandidato kasi sa mga surveys, wala rito. Ang problema natin sa mga kabataan, baka nag-uusap tayo dito, ang mananalo sila. Baliwala lahat ang ating pinag-usapan. Dahil hindi natin naintindihan kung anong nais nila para sa ating bayan. Ano? Yun ang nais kong itanong sa aking mga kapwa-kandidato ngayon. Ano ba yung inyong opinion hinggil dito? Dapat bang manatili na lamang ito na tuwing magkakaroon ng mga ganitong forum, wala sila? Di ba? Yun ang aking katanungan.
Salamat, Sir David. Sino pong gusto sumagot ng katanungan? Okay po, Sir Lopez.
I have a rejoinder to the statement of my esteemed colleague, Attorney Serapio, that the prospect of real change and reform should be initiated by the young people of this country. Because it is really your future that's at stake. We have done our part, and for whatever it's worth, it should contribute to this prospect of making a better nation, a better people. We have to pursue quality education along the lines of our national development goals, in alignment with the requirements of our industry, of our business enterprises, to build a strong economy, to help uplift the lives of our country, of our countrymen, especially those in the lower economic strata. This pandemic has posed challenges, and we could see that many of the solutions exacerbated the problems that was created by this pandemic. And we have to change that.
Thank you so much po. Anyone would like... yes po, Professor Bello.
Sinusuportahan ko si Mr. David. Ano ba yung programa para sa ating kabataan ni Senator Pangilinan, ni Senator Soto? Alam siguro natin yung kay Willie Ong, kasi magka-vibes naman tayo nila Willie Ong. Alam naman natin si Lito Atienza may surgery, no? So excusable. Pero si Sara Duterte na leading sa survey, ano ba talaga ang in-offer niya sa youth? Alam ho nyo, yung one statement na sinabi ho niya sa inyo, kailangan raw ng 2 years mandatory military training. Gagawin K-12. Gagawin K-14 ang K-12. Sumasang-ayon ho ba kayo doon? Kasi alam naman natin, after 12 years of schooling, you want to go out and get a job, make money, help your family, and then what does she want? 2 more years.
Maraming salamat, Professor Bello. We can continue that later, but yan ang paghamon ni Professor Bello, no? Lalo na sa mga leading candidates natin.
Yes nga. Attorney Serapio.
Yeah, in a sidebar before we started the forum now, I discussed with some of those who were in our holding room the problem with beginning our discussion all the time in a forum such as this with issues. Because issues really are ammunitions of interest. If you view it from the point of view of politics, issues are ammunitions from the point of view of interest. Interests in turn are propelled by forces, and forces, when they are able to hinder or move a particular interest, they become power. And when power becomes mandated from the people, the electorate in the electoral process, that becomes authority. Now, in our case, we are discussing the issues with you, specifically the issues of the young, because as stated here, the solutions actually are in your hands being the future. Now, what does it mean to be the future of the land? I suppose that's something we need to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you so much po. I'd like to actually ask a question to our candidates since they've been mentioning na it's on the hands of the youth, yung future po namin. And I think paulit-ulit din po siyang sinasabi even years back. But why do we still experience this crisis, these issues? Ano po kaya yung pwede nyo may offer na bago para para makabahagi ang ating mga kabataan po sa pagunlad ng ating Pilipinas? Anyone could start first. Yes. Yes po.
Alam mo, nung kami ang bata, hindi naman namin tinanong yung ang nakakatanda sa amin, ano ba yung dapat naming gawin. Eh. Ginawa na namin. Kanina, doon sa holding room, sinasabi ko doon sa mga kasama kong mga estudyante. No? Sabi ko, tinatamasa niyo yung kalayaan niyo ngayon dahil sa pinaglaban namin. Yung nangyari sa EDSA, culmination na yon ng decades-long struggle namin. Kami yung maraming napatay, no? Maraming lumaban sa amin na nangawala. No? Kaya ang sinasabi namin, hindi dapat sa amin manggaling ang solusyon sa problemang kinakaharap nyo ngayon. Gawin nyo na. Gawan nyo na ng paraan. We gave you that freedom. A lot of us died during that time. So do it.
Salamat,
Thank you
Sir
so
David.
much.
Sir Lopez.
The Filipino youth represent more than 56% of our electorates. And even under a lesser democracy, the number of deliverable votes that you could generate could effect a change of leadership based on your prescriptions, based on your standards. However, we are not mindful of integrating, of uniting all the forces of the youth to effect real change and reform. I am very glad to speak before this very prestigious group of students from the De La Salle University, from Ateneo, from UP, San Beda, among others. But if you go back to the rural areas, they do not share your mindset. And this we have to address by reaching out to the less privileged youth of this country in order to generate the kind of mindset that is necessary to effect real change and reform.
Thank you so much, Sir Lopez. Professor Bello, go ahead.
Alam naman natin, in every country, in every generation, it is the youth that creates or is the ferment of change. No? Si Bonifacio, I believe he was 32 when he died. Rizal was, I believe, 34 or 35. Gabriela Silang was, 31? So, you had a situation where the leading edge of change were young people during all of the rebellions, practical all of the rebellions that took place, and the great national revolution of 1896. No? At makikita naman natin yung centrality ng youth. Youth is synonymous with rebellion. And that is why the challenge to the youth of today in the Philippines, when are you going to start rebelling against the politics and the economy that holds you down?
Maraming salamat po, Professor Bello. Ayan, Audrey, no, grabe, umpisa pa lang ng ating talakayan, napakainit na po agad. Pasadahan lang natin, Audrey, very quickly. No, kanina si Sir Walden Bello, sinabi niya na pinalubha pa ng pandemya yung mga krisis na kinakaharap natin. Si Sir David naman, sinabi niya na galing sa kabataan dapat ang solusyon. Si Sir Lopez, sinabi niya na dapat labanan natin, no, yung kasalukuyang sistema ng pamamahala, at si Attorney Serapio naman, sinabi niya na dapat meron tayong worldview bilang mga kabataan.
Gusto ko din idagdag, no, yung sinabi nila kanina na we need to learn from our history because through this, we will know how we will change our future or what we can do to change our future. Another thing they also said is to unify our youth, because through this we could also create change. And lastly, the youth is very synonymous to rebellion, and it's must for the youth to act against the system that provides injustices to them.
Tama.
Yeah.
Audrey, very quickly, binanggit mo yung about sa kasaysayan. Lalo na ngayon, ang daming mga efforts na siyempre burahin o baguhin yung kasaysayan na meron tayo. Ito siguro yung kailangan nating labanan ng sama-sama para mapigilan
Agree.
yung disinformation, online man o offline.
Super nakaka-relate ka dun sa disinformation na yon. So I think as youth, it is one of the most concrete ways for us to create change in our country is to fight against disinformation. So maraming salamat po. Yes po, Attorney.
Attorney, go ahead.
Yeah. I was about to say, what is the character of the youth? The character of the youth is you see things not as they are, but you dream of things that never were. That is the character of being young. You dream, you see the future, as was stated by one of our colleagues. And unless you really become true to your character as visioning, as one who sees the future, you have prescience, then you will not be able to really effect change. The other thing is you have to see your power. You mentioned about 56% are the voters. The voters are young. What are you going to do with the 56%? You have to galvanize that into something that will go towards a unified direction. And unless and until the youth recognizes that they have this power in their hands, then you will simply just be one among those still living in the current situation and not really being disruptors. You have to be disruptors.
Yes, thank you so much po. Maganda yung nasabi po sa atin ni Attorney Serapio na it's the power that we have. So maraming salamat po again. We are going to take a 10-minute break before we proceed to the next part of our forum. Stay tuned. This is Pili Mo, Pili Ko, Pilipino, the Youth Vote 2022 Vice Presidential Forum.
Lahat tayo may pangarap para sa bayan. Pero, paano natin tututuparin? Maging non-free volunteer sa araw ng halalan at sama-sama natin tuparin ang pangarap sa bayan. Bantayan ng boto, bantayan ang bayan. Dahil tayo ay bantay ng bayan.
Hi! Magandang araw sa inyo lahat. Ako nga pala si Emmanuel Sakay, galing sa Angono, Rizal. Ako ay NAMFREL volunteer ng Rizal Province Chapter. Nagsimula ako sa NAMFREL noong 1998. Noong panahon na estudyante pa lang ako, actually hindi pa nga ako botante nung time na yun eh. Pero nasabak ako sa NAMFREL dahil sa isang activity sa simbahan na kung saan magbabantay sa eleksyon. At dahil dito, nakilala ko ang NAMFREL. Sumali ako sa NAMFREL sa totoo lang dahil sa paniniwala na marami ako matututunan dito. Marami akong makikitang mga tao, makikilalang mga kaibigan, at may experience na alam kong makakatulong ako sa bayan. Alam kong makakakontribute ako sa pag-unlad ng bayan. Actually, simula noong 2001, isa sa mga hindi ko makakalimutan talaga yung first time ako makamit ng mga totoong politiko. Kasi yung mga politiko, madalas nagkakampanya sa TV lang, sa poster. Pag nasa NAMFREL ka, makikita mo sila in person. Ganun yung experience ko. Simula noong nag-volunteer ako sa Operation Quick Count ng NAMFREL, parang ordinaryong tao na lang din ang tingin ko sa kanila kasi harap-harapan mo sila makikita Kaya yan ang experience sa NAMFREL. Kapag kayo ay nag-volunteer sa NAMFREL, maaaring ganun din yung maramdaman ninyo. Siyempre, alam nyo dito sa NAMFREL, dito mo matututunan na maging non-partisan, yung wala kang kikilingan kahit sino. Na kaya mong magsalita, na kaya mong mag-express ng opinion, hindi ka magiging bias. Dito sa NAMFREL, natutunan ko kung paanong maging non-partisan. Kaya kayong mga naririyan na nakikinig at nanonood, I encourage you and I invite you to join NAMFREL. Sign up for NAMFREL dahil dito sa NAMFREL, mas marami kayong ma-experience, marami kayong matututunan, at ang magagawa ninyo para sa bayan sa pamamagitan ng NAMFREL ay very exceptional. Bantayan ng boto, bantayan ng bayan.
God continues to call us to love like Christ and live in His Spirit. In the footsteps of John Baptist de La Salle, Christ our brother, who loves us all, calls us to follow Him and sends all to serve all. My brother, I tell you, this is our faithful response to Jesus Christ's invitation. Yes to the call of God, bear witness to the love of Christ, respond to the inspiration of the Spirit. Yes, heed the call, live as disciples of Christ, discover where your yes road can lead you. When you discern the brother's life, we form and guide you. We walk with you side by side. We share one passion, one purpose and identity. Feel the belonging and solidarity. We dare us our brothers. This is our faithful response to Jesus Christ's invitation. Yes to the call of God, bear witness to the love of Christ, respond to the inspiration of the Spirit. Yes, heed the call, live as disciples of Christ, discover where your yes road can lead you. Our mission has always been to give human and Christian education, inspiring more and more Lasallians to recognize God's Spirit in the lives of God. Bear witness respond to the inspiration of the Spirit. Yes, heed the call. Live as disciples of Christ. Discover where your yes from can lead you. Witness to the love of Christ. Respond to the inspiration of the Spirit. Yes, heed the call. Live as disciples of Christ. Discover where your yes from can lead you. Discover where your yes from can lead you.
Ang pagboto ng mamamayan ay higit pa sa isang oportunidad na maihayag ang ating tinig. Ang pagboto ng mamamayan ay isang karapatan na hindi dapat masayang. Maging natural volunteer para ipaglaban ang ating karapatan at tinig. Bantayan ng boto, bantayan ng bayan.
Magandang araw, ako si Caloidinio. Invite namin kayo na maging part ng Tamang Kandidato campaign. Ang Tamang Kandidato ay voter education program na tumutulong na maging maingat at discerning ang mga Pilipino sa pagpili ng kandidato sa eleksyon. Pansin niyo ba na maraming Pilipino ang attracted sa magagandang pangako ng mga kandidato? Marami ang halos hindi na nag-iisip. Tumataya na lang sa sikat o umaayon na lang sa gusto ng iba o kung sino ang malaki ang bigay. Pero sa huli, korap pala ang politiko. Napapako na ang pangako, ninanakawan pa ang kaban ng bayan. Sa tamang kandidato, binibigyan natin ng emphasis ang values sa pagpili ng kandidato. Sa pamamagitan ng personal reflection at mga group discussion, encourage tayo na pumili ayon sa ating mga values bilang mga Pilipino at ayon sa ating faith sa Diyos. Dahil dito nagkakaroon ng pagbabago sa pagpili ng kandidato na mas tapat sa kalooban ng Diyos. Subok na ito noong 2019 at nakapartner natin ang maraming churches, faith-based organizations, educational institutions at maging mga private companies sa Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao. Ayon sa journalist na si John Neri, ang tamang kandidato daw ay ang best na voter education program na nakita niya. Gusto naming lumawak ang reach ng tamang kandidato campaign sa online learning at social media at kailangan namin ng tulong ninyo. Kung kayo ay church or eskwelahan or community organization o kahit private company at gusto ninyo magkaroon ng voter education sa grupo ninyo, mag-partner po tayo. Kung kayo ay may experience sa pag-facilitate ng small groups or mag-host ng school or church events, kung may experience kayo sa training, pwede kayong maging accredited facilitator ng tamang kandidato. Kung marunong kayong magsulat o magaling sa graphic design or sanay sa pag-produce ng video o kaya ay mahusay sa social media management, pwede tayo magtulungan para sa social media campaign ng Tamang Kandidato program. Message nyo kami sa Tamang Kandidato Facebook page or email nyo kami sa tamaka2022@gmail.com.
Welcome back, everyone. This is part 2 of Pili Mo, Pili Ko, Pilipino, the Youth Vote 2022 Vice Presidential Forum. Dahil tungkol nga sa mga kabataan ang ating forum, sa part 2 ay titingnan natin at susuriin natin ang 40s, top 10 trending topics. Ito yung mga issues na nag-trend sa social media kung saan aktibo at engaged kaming mga kabataan.
Tama. Sa bahaging ito, ang mga katanungan ay masasagot lamang ng oo o hindi. Hawak ng ating mga kandidato ngayon ang isang cardboard na may kulay na green sa isang side at red naman sa kabilang side. Yan, hawak na ng mga candidates natin. Kapag ang sagot ay oo, ipapakita nila ang green side. At kung hindi ang sagot, ipapakita ang red side.
Alright. Pagkatapos ng bawat sagot, bibigyan natin ng pagkakataon ang isang kandidato sa green side at ang isang kandidato sa red side para magbigay ng explanation ng kanilang naging sagot.
Kung sakaling pare-pareho naman ang sagot ng lahat, pwedeng magbigay ng dagdag na paliwanag ang dalawa sa ating mga kandidato.
At sa parehong pagkakataon, ang unang magtataas ng kamay, ang bibigyan natin ng 1 minute para magsalita. Again, 1 minute ang bibigyan natin sa kanila.
Alright, handa na po ba ang ating mga candidates?
Handa na po ba?
No? Yes, ayan. Pwede nyo na pong gamitin ang
Okay.
cardboard ninyo. Okay, ito ang unang trending topic. Sa inyong opinion, ready na ba tayong lahat na magdaos ng face-to-face classes sa gitna ng COVID-19 pandemic? Handa na ba tayo o hindi pa handa?
Green kung oo, handa na. Red kung hindi, hindi pa handa. Wait lang po. Raise your boards. Nakataas na sila. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Okay. Yan,
Lahat
Audrey.
sila ay nag-yes.
Yes.
So, ating tanungin ang ating mga candidates kung ano yung explanation nila. Maybe we could start.
Okay, only 2 candidates for each round. Sige, si Sir Rizalito David.
Alam niyo, tapos na yung pandemya eh. Endemic, merong gamot, kailangan lang natin yung mga precautions ng kaunti. Pero ang pinaka-importante dito, dapat magbukas na tayo. Masyado na nag-suffer yung mga kabataan. Hindi lang yung katulad nyo, no, na mga nasa tertiary level na. Ang kawawa, yung mga bata, 2 taong walang natutunan. Ang natuto, yung nanay. Dahil yung nanay ang gumagawa ng assignment, no? So anong gagawin natin kung pagpapatuloy pa natin yung ginagawa ng IATF at yung gusto ni Ginoong Duterte? Tama na. Pinagkakitaan na nila ng malaki itong nangyaring pandemya na ito. May mga bagay sila na ginawa noon na hindi dapat nilang ginawa. Muntik nang mamatay ng tuluyan ng ating ekonomiya. Hinihintay nila yung mga ilang bagay na pagkakakitaan, imbis na gumawa ng mga kritikal at crucial na desisyon, hinintay nila, ito, kailangan natin yung bakuna para tayo ay magkaroon na ng herd immunity, etc. Alam nyo, may gamot naman, may mga prophylaxis na pwedeng gamitin ng mga napakahabang panahon na pwede sanang ginamit na at maaga tayo nakapagbukas talaga. Kaya naninindigan ako na tapos na yan. Tama na, pinagkakitaan nyo na, parang awa nyo na, ibalik nyo na yung aming buhay sa amin. No? Maraming salamat.
Thank you so much, Mr. David. Last for this round, Sir Belio, go ahead.
Well, yes ako, but we should do it cautiously, no? At let us not say that we are now on an endemic phase. Kasi wala pang scientific proof na endemic na nga. At alam naman natin that the Omicron B variant is still raging in different parts of the world, like in Europe, in Thailand, in China, in Hong Kong. No? So, yes, let's do it, but open up carefully. And we must make sure, that we have good air filtration systems para sa mga classrooms natin. Kasi alam naman natin that COVID-19 is airborne. And So it would be very important to have those very good air filtration systems, that would be part of the design of yung mga classrooms natin. We should really do that, no? And I would say keep the health protocols in mind, social distancing as well as yung mga masks. And of course, we want to make sure that vaccinated ang majority of the population. Certainly by, if we win, Leody and I will make sure or will push to have about 80% of the population having had 2 doses and boosters by October 2022. So that's going to be very important to push.
All right. Thank you so much po, Professor Bello. Paalala lang po sa ating candidates, itaas niyo po yung boards kapag nasabi po namin yung huling number. Okay, maraming salamat po ulit sa inyong sagot. Tuloy na po tayo sa trending topic number 2. Gawing mandatory ang vaccination laban sa COVID-19 para sa ating mga kabataan. Agree or disagree? Teka
Green
lang po,
kung
teka lang
oo.
po. Wait.
Red kung hindi, if you disagree. Raise your boards in 3, 2, 1, and go. Okay, naka-raise
Matataas
na rin.
sila eh.
Lahat po sila ay nag-no.
No. Dito naman tayo siguro.
Dito tayo sa side.
So let's ask first si Attorney Serapio for your explanation.
Well, in the first place, I was about to say, itong COVID-19 up to now has not really been clearly identified as a pathogen. In other words, there is such a thing as the Koch protocol, and based on this criteria, it seems like they cannot really say if it is an organism or not. That being the case, there's really a need for more research and for us to develop. What is being injected to us and to those who have received the vaccination is not really a vaccine the way we have understood it in our generation. It is actually a program. So if it's a program just like what you have in the computer, you have to keep on improving that. There will have to be several versions of the program every time what has been injected cannot recognize the new strain or the so-called new variant. And that's the reason why I am a bit hesitant, because that means that an individual can actually be captive by this process. It will become a never-ending process. That's so different from the kind of vaccines we receive in our youth. One vaccination, and that lasts you for the entire lifetime. So we need to understand this phenomenon more clearly, and we have to be more definite on how we should respond to it. Let us not expose our people to this mandatory kind of vaccination without the benefit of real incisive study and analysis of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attorney Serapio. Mr. Manny Lopez, this is your chance to explain po your...
Thank you very much, young lady. I happen to be an advocate for science-based, pragmatic, and cost-effective approach to pandemic management. And true enough, we've had several episodes, surges of caused by different variants. And it is necessary that we take all the precautions in order to protect public health and safety, particularly students, when we are ready to open up our universities, our schools and colleges, to face-to-face learning. And, well, we very well know that, face-to-face learning is essential in improving the quality of education. And I happen to be I would say, a fan of the Swedish approach in pandemic management. Because if you take a look at the statistics, there are over 600,000 deaths due to different types of diseases and causes. And every year here in the Philippines. And so far, in the past 2.5 years, the deaths attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic comes to about 60,000. And you see the statistics that our lives has been turning around on this fundamental issue of microbiological hazard that we are not yet 100% sure on what it is. And so better science, advancements in science, in healthcare, as well as in medicine, in the treatment of COVID-19 is essential in order for us to be able to overcome the repercussions.
All right. Thank you so much, Sir Manny Lopez. Okay, ngayon naman dumako na tayo sa ating trending topic number 3, to address and arrest the rising cases of teenage pregnancies and the spread of HIV and other sexually transmitted diseases. Dapat ba o hindi dapat na magkaroon na ng separate subject sa ating mga high schools ng sex education?
Very timely. So to our candidates, saglit lang po. Green kung oo, dapat. Red kung hindi dapat. Raise your boards in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, so we have 3 yeses and 1 no. Okay, para sa pinakaunang bukod tanging no natin, si Sir David, please, you have 2 minutes to explain.
Ang feeling ko kasi sa aking pag-aaral mismo, hindi yun sa level ng high school dapat pag-usapan. Yang bagay na yan. In fact, sa mas mataas pang grado, no? Ang kailangan natin para dun sa level ng secondary students, yung complete pa rin na guide, no? Yung moralidad pa rin ng ating kabataan ang dapat nating tutukan. Hindi muna natin sila dapat buksan sa mga usapin na maaaring mas makasama sa kanilang kalagayan. No? In fact, yung teenage pregnancy ngayon, kaya nakikita natin na mataas yung statistics. No? Dahil na rin doon sa fact na nagkaroon ng pagbabago sa ating kultura, mas tinatanggap na natin ngayon na yung ating may mga nagkakamaling bata, nagkakamali, no? Na nabubuntis. Okay? Sa akin, mas matutuwa pa ako doon. Dahil nakikita natin, okay, nandiyan siya, nabuntis, tulungan, etc. Yung masama yung nagdaang panahon. Mababa nga yung statistics ng teenage pregnancy, pero ang taas ng level ng abortion. So to me, okay yun, yung teenage pregnancy, wag na lang yung abortion ang mangyari. No? Pero hindi ko gusto na sa panahon ng sekundarya, discuss yung bagay na yan. Mas dapat yan sa mas mataas na grado. Ang sa akin, i-inculcate sa mga bata yung kailangan nilang spiritualidad, ang kanilang moralidad, yun ang dapat bantayan ng hindi lang ng simbahan, maging ng pamahalaan. Yun ang aking pagtingin sa bagay na yan.
Okay, to respond on behalf of those who agreed, we have Professor Bello.
Yes, first of all, sumasang-ayon ako kay Mr. David na, you know, civics training and moral training is important, but I don't think that conflicts with teaching at the level of, you know, sex education, yung ating mga kabataan at the secondary level. Ako ho ay isa ng principal authors ng Reproductive Health Bill. And klarong-klaro roon na itinakda na magkaroon ng sex education. No? And napakita naman natin, malaki ho yung debate dyan doon sa House. And it was shown that from the experience of various countries, talaga hong nakakatulong yung sex education at doon ho sa prevention of teenage pregnancy. In places like the Netherlands and elsewhere, very advanced yung sex education nila, the rates of teenage pregnancy is quite low, very low. So nakakatulong ho yan. So rather than have our youth sort of go into experimentation where they don't know what is actually happening or have certain ideas about it or don't have any notion of what's happening, responsible sex education is really very, very important at this point to be able to counter the rise in teenage pregnancy. And of course, not only that, I think, that, as I said, hindi magkatunggali yung moral education and yung sex education. They're complementary.
Maraming salamat, Professor Bello.
Thank you so much. Ito naman ang trending topic number 4. Kunwari ay may na-discover na precious minerals sa ilalim ng isang bundok. If we mine it, malaki ang kikitain ng Pilipinas. Pero kapag ginawa yon, mapapalayas ang mga katutubong nakatira sa lugar na ito at makakalbo naman ang bundok. So to our candidates, dapat bang minahin ang mga minerals na ito o hindi?
Green kung dapat, red kung hindi dapat. Raise your boards in 3, 2, 1. Okay, we have 3 no's
and 1 yes.
and 1 yes.
Let's call Mr. Lopez for your explanation to your answer. You have 2 minutes.
I say yes with a qualifier. It will all depend on the cost-benefit analysis of mining precious minerals in an area that is occupied by indigenous people. Kung yung pong area ay napakalaki at wala nang masyadong commercial value other than the minerals underneath, and there are ways and opportunities to resettle our indigenous people and perhaps improve on the way they live their lives in a modern society, then I'm for it. However, if the cost, the cultural cost to the indigenous people will be too high and it will lead to their displacements, to the eradication of their customs, of their culture, then I would say no, that being my qualifier. And lastly, I think we have to protect the rights, the customs of our indigenous people, and we should not allow commercialism or exploitation to happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lopez. So na-mention niya yung isang economic principle, the cost-benefit. So let's proceed next to Attorney Serapio for the answer.
The question was framed in a way that you will have to choose between two values. In politics, value is as a desired output. It's an object of desire. So in this particular case, the value of preserving the homeland, it may be called the ancestral land of the indigenous peoples, as well as the value of the environment, as against the value now of minerals which are going to be mined in the area. Clearly, I said I am going to be against the mining of the minerals in that particular mountain or land if it will, as mentioned earlier, affect not just the culture, the tradition, but the very lives of the indigenous people living there. It has been our experience in our generation that issues like this become social, and it has caused conflicts which have taken the lives of a lot of people. In our generation, many of us perhaps will remember the life of Makliing Dulag, no? When there was an attempt to build a dam in their area. And the young people of that time identified with what the indigenous people there said. The land and us are one. In others, insofar as the IPs are concerned, land is life to them. It is not simply just a resource. So I would imagine when it comes to the issue of the indigenous peoples, this will have to be treaded very carefully because this can bring about the kind of social conflict that will not only disturb the peace, but will create violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, attorney. So it's a political principle naman ang pinakita nila. So it really goes to show na mayroong magkakaibang sagot pa rin talaga.
Alright.
Dito.
Maraming salamat po sa inyong mga sagot. Ngayon naman, dumako tayo sa trending topic number 5. Isang dekada na mula na ng implementasyon nitong K-12 education system sa bansa at libo na ang graduate dito. Sa inyong assessment, ayon sa itinakdang goals at objectives ng programa, successful ba ito o hindi?
Very relate ako dyan. As
First batch
also,
ka ba yan?
first batch ako ng K-12. So to our candidates, I want to know your answer to this. So green kung oo, successful ang ating K-12. Red kung hindi successful. Raise your boards in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, consensus po na no. Ang
It was a
sagot
no.
ng ating mga candidates, hindi successful ang
I
K-12.
want to know their answer here,
Tapos mamaya,
Jules.
sagutin mo rin yan,
Ay,
Audrey.
Sige, Miss Universe pala to.
Okay.
Sige,
Alright,
let's
sino pong
ask
gustong
her.
una mag-explain? Only 2 candidates for this one. Professor Bello.
Well, ang sense ko, from what has happened so far, it's not been a success, no? But because my feeling is that the solution really is not adding more years, no? It is really the quality of the education that you received in the previous system, no? So that's one thing. And the second thing is, what worries me is that the idea behind K-12 was that we ought to have it to make our graduates more competitive when it comes to jobs outside the country. So talaga ho malakas yung sense na this was for labor export. And my sense is that if we have an economy that really focuses on providing jobs for people within the country, then I think your approach to it would be quite different, which is, focus on the quality of education within the old system and not keep on adding, just years that wala naman palang impact sa quality of education. And my God, and the idea of Sara Duterte is to add 2 more years to K-12, meaning you're going to have a military education. Hindi ba sobra naman yon?
K-14.
K-14. So, I wish she were here to defend that idea, but apparently she's just going to push it down on your throats.
Okay, thank
I
you.
hope she doesn't get elected to do that.
Thank you, Professor Bello.
Yes,
Go ahead,
po.
sir.
Ako naman sumasang-ayon ako na magkaroon ng K-12. Subalit, dapat ito ay dinisenyo base doon sa isang framework na magpasa hanggang ngayon ay hindi natin nagagawa. Yung edukasyon natin dapat nakatutok kung anong kinabukasan, vision na meron tayo bilang isang bansa. Hindi natin alam ano bang gusto natin patunguhan hanggang ngayon. Wala tayo nung vision na yon. Kaya yung educational system natin as a whole, failure Dahil hindi natin maitutok sa anong direksyon, no? Anong kinabukasan yung nais natin. Do we want an industrialized society in the future? Therefore, our educational system should be designed for that. Yun yung framework na sinasabi ko. Ang nangyayari sa atin ngayon, nangangapa tayo parati. Hindi natin alam, saan ba tayo tutungo talaga? No? Tinanong nyo ba sa inyong mga sarili yan, kayong mga estudyante, ano ba gusto natin napuntahan? Tinanong ba natin ang mga leader natin ng lipunan, ano ba yung inyong pangarap para sa ating bansa? Sa akin, tama yung may K-12, pero dapat yan na idisenyo doon sa framework na dapat sana ay nagkaroon tayo ng national consensus. We want an industrialized future and therefore, every institution should be geared and designed towards that future. No? Yun, kaya yung K-12 nasayang dahil hindi siya nakaakma sa isang framework nga na hanggang sa ngayon ay hindi natin mapagtanto. Yun po ang kailangan natin. Kaya dapat tayo maghalal ng mga leader na mayroong vision. No? Vision. Hindi yung mga libre dito, libre dyan, no? Ito yung gagawin natin, etc. Ang kailangan ng leader, yung may vision at alam kung paano pupuntahan yung vision na yun, may direction.
Thank you, Mr. David. Audrey, merong 10-second confession daw si Professor Bello. Accommodate natin.
Okay, sige po.
In the interest of full disclosure and transparency, I voted for K-12 when I was in the House of Representatives. I had misgivings, but I voted for it. And I have been shown to have made the wrong decision. So I apologize to the youth of the country for having made that decision.
Wow.
Accountable.
Accountability.
I love that.
Audrey, ikaw, anong
Okay.
tingin mo?
I cannot speak on behalf of everyone na naka-experience ng K-12, but maybe on others. Personally kasi ako, I am against on K-12 because, first of all, additional 2 years. Di naman po kami mayaman na family. But, yun, the fact na may additional 2 years kasi siya, sayang sana nasa law school na ako or nakapag-work na ako 2 years before. But I think it all goes to show na kailangan pa natin i-revisit ang ating educational policies dito sa ating bansa. And I am hopeful that our future leaders would do that and see what would best fit to the future of our youth.
Thank you, Audrey.
And I thank you. This universe.
At syempre, dapat kasama yung kabataan sa paglikha ng mga policies na
Yes,
to.
definitely. Kasi sila naman yung makaka-receive ng benefits ng mga policies natin, di ba? So yun.
Okay,
Maraming
tuloy-tuloy
salamat sa ating candidates. Now, for the trending topic number 6, noong September at October 2021, tinanggal na ng at least 3 state universities mula sa kanilang mga libraries ang mga libro at ibang reading materials na tinitingnan bilang subversive. Tama lang daw ito para maiwasang maimpluwensyahan ang mga kabataang magbabasa ng mga ito na sumali sa grupo ng mga rebelde laban sa pamahalaan. To our candidates, do you agree or disagree?
Green kung agree, red kung disagree. Raise your boards in 3, 2, and 1.
Okay.
Consensus, no. Okay.
No.
Okay, siguro from this side naman po tayo
Okay.
first.
Attorney Serapio, you have 2 minutes to explain your answer.
Well, the academy is supposed to be really the marketplace of ideas. Regardless of whether you agree with an idea or not, with an ideology, that should have a space in any academic environment. So, it is, and at the same time, students are discerning. They have the capacity to be able to really judge whether a particular reading material is something that they should adopt or not. So, when it comes to those kind of books, for example, had it not been for the idea of the French Revolution, of liberty, fraternity, and equality, which inspired the young people of the 19th century who were responsible in fighting for our freedom and independence, then that would not have been germinated. So it is very important for the young people to be exposed to all kinds of ideas. But at the same time, you have to really be discerning. Anything that is going to be against the values, for example, of peace, the values which you uphold in your lives, of justice, but rather it is something that encourages violence, then you know whether to stay away from those ideas or not. But it is not a solution that you are going to be prevented from reading these kind of materials, especially in an academic environment such as schools and universities, because that is where actually the kind of ideas that bring about change start. And the young people are the ones, impressive as they may be, easily impressionistic, but you have to trust their ability to discern, the ability of young people to use their reason in order to be able to respond to a particular situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attorney Serapio. I'd like to hear from Mr. Manny Lopez.
I'd like to say that let 1,000 flowers bloom. Just make sure it doesn't kill you and it doesn't cause allergic reaction. Now, you know, there are, I would say, freedoms in academic information that we should allow in our universities and other learning institutions. This is one way, actually, to test certain hypotheses and come up with the right synthesis. And prevention of materials that may espouse other ideas, other thoughts, other concepts may not be the right approach in coming up with what is the truth, what is reality, and what are the solutions to all these socio-political and economic problems that we're facing. And lastly, on the aspect of science, can you imagine if we continue to think that the world or the universe actually revolves on planet Earth? That would be preposterous. So let us allow certain degrees of academic freedom to actually educate our people, our young people, and let them decide on their own and in the course of time test this hypothesis in order to come up with a reality that we have to pursue and a reality that we could live on.
All right. Thank you so much. So, defend academic freedom. Yan ang panawagan. Okay. Salamat po ulit sa inyong mga sagot. Ngayon naman, dumako tayo sa ating trending topic number 7. Ito po ay tungkol sa juvenile delinquency. Para sa inyo, dapat ba o hindi dapat na ipasa ang panukalang ibaba ang age of criminal liability from 15 years old to 12 years old o mas bata pa to 9 years old?
To our candidates, again, green kung dapat, red kung hindi dapat. Raise your boards in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, 3 ang no at 1 ang yes. Okay, for the lone yes with qualifier.
qualifier.
Okay, go ahead,
Explain for your answer.
Sir Lopez.
Actually, the proposed law is lower criminal liability to, I believe, 14 or 16 years old, not 12. No? Ang krimen po ay composes of two factors, no? The mens rea and actus reus. Yung pag-iisip ng gumawa ng masama at yung actual action para gawin yung masama. Usually against other people, other persons, or against property or a certain interest. Ngayon po, ang 12 years old ba ay wala pang supisyente? Or ang 14 years old, no? That would be my cut-off point. Ang 14 years old ba, wala pang supisyenteng pag-iisip na kung ano ang masama o ang mabuti? Wala pa ba siyang kapasidad na gawin ang isang masamang bagay or huwag gawin dahil sa kanyang pag-iisip? So, given those premises po, ang aking pong panikala ay ang 14 years old and above would have that mindful capacity to understand what is wrong and what is right. Now, pagdating po sa pagpapatupad ng krimen, ano? Ako po ay naniniwala na kailangang ang mga juvenile delinquents ay ang maging parusa ay reformatory. Hindi po parusa, reformatory. Sila po ay kailangan ma-rehabilitate, mabigyan ng tamang aral kung ano ang masama at ang mabuti. Sapagkat karamihan po ng ating mga juvenile delinquents are products of broken homes, of products of a broken society. And so, we will have to come up with reformatory solutions para maituwid ang mga batang nagkasala.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lopez. Let's ask next, Attorney Serapio, for your explanation.
I agree with Manny here. The age of reason is considered to be that period in a person's life when he can already distinguish between right and wrong. And as we all know, those of us who have been actually students in Catholic universities or institutions, we've been taught that the age of reason is just 7. So even a child would already have a sense of what is right and what is wrong. Having said that, however, the reason for the proposed law to reduce the age, say from 15 down, is because they are being used by criminal syndicates in the commission of a crime. That may be a valid reason on why you would want to do that, but at the same time, you have to look also at the child as one who needs not be punished, but one who has to really be reformed, because otherwise you will be stealing that child's life from him at a very early age. Can you imagine if a child commits the crime of murder or of killing someone, and he will have to be given the imprisonment of life imprisonment? So that it would effectively now be really killing the very child himself or herself. And therefore, there has to really be this reformative kind of approach when it comes to treating a child below 15 years old who has committed a crime as a result of other reasons, like the influence of a syndicate, the social situation where he is in, and other reasons that may have been the cause for committing that crime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attorney. I'd like to add, no, as a psych student na rin, it's really hard to determine po kasi talaga kung ano yung age na kaya nang mag-reason out ng isang bata. So it's really, it really, there's really a debate kung ano talaga yung age na kailangan umpisahan yung age na yon. But gusto kong i-highlight din na kailangan natin ng rehabilitation to these children, because hindi natin malalaman kung ano yung pwede pa nilang i-offer sa mundo natin if hindi natin sila tutulungan para maging mas maayos na citizen of this country. So yun.
Tama, kumbaga give change a chance
Yes.
for them.
Second chance, parang
Tama.
gano'n.
Okay.
Salamat po ulit sa mga sagot. Let's go to trending topic number 8. Dapat bang mag-impose ng mas mabigat na parusa para sa mga tao at mga social media platforms na nagpapakalat ng fake news and historical distortions online? Yes or no?
Ako, ang dami niyan. Green if yes, red if no. Please raise your boards in 3, 2, 1. Okay. All right, consensus yes. Okay, can we have an explanation from Professor Bello?
Well, I think that when it comes to social media platforms, kailangan na mapulis na sila because Facebook, Twitter, etc., they have been practically unregulated, no? And it's only been under the pressure of criticism that they began to self-police. But self-policing, I don't think, is really the way to go. I think government must step in, as it has stepped in various countries, to regulate the social media so that they do not become a platform for the dissemination of fake news. Now, when it comes to individuals, I think that there must be, yes, they must, there must be efforts to also make sure that individuals, especially those who consistently commit the transmission of fake news, do get regulated and have some degree of penalties that they face for this, especially if they don't change their attitudes. But I don't think we should be passing laws like the cybercrime law, that in fact makes it open to abuse, so that even people who are just putting out some, innocently maybe something which is accurately to the fact, get penalized because the state, wants them, or there is a political motive for their being penalized through cybercrime. So yun ang qualification ko.
Okay, maraming salamat, Professor Bello. Okay, Sir David, go ahead.
I would like to defer to the ideas of our good friend, Attorney Serapio.
What is really involved in the question is truth. And truth has many dimensions. So whenever we say that what is being proffered in social media platforms are fake news, then the victim there is the truth. The next question is, how do you now determine whether such news is fake or not? And that will be part of the regulatory function. So if, for example, there is this news that casts aspersion on a particular individual, and that individual not only objects to it, but belies it, then there are processes in our legal system that allows for the kind of remedy in order for that individual to be vindicated. When it comes to what we call historical truth, not so much historical revisionism, our country unfortunately has gone through decades of convolution, as I call it. And that is the reason why part of the analysis of our political party, the Katipunan ng Kamalayang Kayumanggi, is that we are in a state of moral convolution, wherein the young people of today are no longer given the correct perspective, not just the perspective, but the facts as they happened in our history. In our generation, up to now, we're still trying to resolve si Bonifacio ba o si Aguinaldo ang totoong bayani o hindi. That was never really resolved by our generation. In this particular case, unfortunately, you, the youth, also are faced once more with that kind of an issue or that kind of a question. How are you going to resolve it? You have to study history. You have to study it.
Thank you so much. Very quickly.
May I offer a rejoinder to the statements of Professor Bello and Attorney Serapio? We have to strike a balance between regulation and freedom of speech, because there are circumstances and situations where we really don't know what is the truth, because we are anchoring these regulatory measures in order to preserve the truth. On the matter of history, the appreciation of history, it would be illegal, if not, an unconsumable act to criticize the Spanish colonial regime or the American colonial regime. But, the history at that time was propounded by those in power in the colonial government. And yet, this is not the truth that we Filipinos should, subscribe to. So we have to strike a balance in the regulatory function of the internet, as well as in other media channels, in order to arrive at the truth. And in the present circumstances, this proliferation of trolls and revisionists, as you may put it, they're all serving certain interests. And if this same interest is aligned with the authority that regulates information, then we are in a difficult situation. and it will only bring a negative effect to our aspiration for what is the truth and what is right for our country. And so, again, I believe our appreciation of the truth should be anchored also on the facts of history as well as on what is just and right for our country and for our people.
All right, thank you. Very quickly also, Professor Bello. Okay, looks like very interested lahat
No,
dito.
I think this
Right.
is a very important discussion. And I would agree with Mr. David about the necessity of balancing regulation and truth. No? And as I said earlier, definitely laws such as the cybercrime law that are really designed for political oppression should not be there. However, here are the big questions. No? How are you going to deal with somebody or a group that advocates persecution of certain races or denies the existence of the Holocaust or says that LGBTs deserve to be killed? I think that here is where we're coming to a situation where there is a rightful, part on the part of the state to do something about that. Kasi hate speech na yan eh.
Yes.
And hate speech leads to hateful actions. So I think that let's take it, let's examine these existential limit questions. And if a law is necessary in order to deal with hate speech and prevent violence from taking place, then in that case, it's probably necessary.
Thank you, Professor Bello. Pero syempre, Audrey, no, important yung regulation. Pero yung implementers mismo, kung mismong mula sa Estado, ay
Nako po.
nagpapakalat mismo ng disinformation.
Yan ang
Kailangan maging alert din tayo na banggain din natin kung nagagaling sa kanila mismo. And of course, sources of disinformation mismo. Kasi mga nagpapakalat ng fake news, baka biktima sila
Yes.
nung ecosystem ng disinformation. Kaya please, bisitahin nyo po ang factsfirst.ph para maging bahagi tayo para banggain ang disinformation.
Gusto ko yung na-promote mo pa,
Oo
no?
nga, na-segue ko. Okay, maraming salamat po. Ngayon naman, dumako tayo sa trending topic number 9. Should the government offer reparation para sa mga pamilya ng mga biktima ng drug war and other police and military abuses? Especially if the victim is a minor, yes or no?
Green if yes, red if no. Please raise your boards in 3, 2, 1. Okay, consensus.
Consensus, yes.
4 out of 4, yes. Let's ask.
Sino pang gusto mag-explain?
Mr. David, maybe you would like to explain your answer.
More than the reparation, those who were responsible for these extrajudicial killings should be imprisoned right away. Yung reparation, we can discuss that later on. Ang importante, sa susunod na administrasyon, ang unang-unang dapat pagbigyang pansin ay ang pagkakaroon ng isang truth commission. No? Na imbestigahan lahat ng nangyari, particular doon sa war on drugs, para yung namang mga responsableng mga tao na pumatay, no? At nag-utos ng pagpatay ay mabigyan kagad ng kasagutan sa batas. Kailangan makulong, kailangan may managot. At yun namang mga kababayan natin, lalo na yung mga bata, no? Yung mga walang kamalay-malay na nadamay dyan, no? Yun ang dapat tulungan din natin dahil hindi lang naman pera ang kapalit nung nangyari sa kanila. Yung buhay na nawala sa mga pamilyang yan, hindi yan napapalitan ng salapi. Kailangan yan mag-undergo ng maraming, sabihin natin, counseling. No? Na magpasa hanggang ngayon ay hindi naman ibinibigay ng Estado. Dahil ang pinagbubuhusan ng pansin ay ng Estado ngayon ay paano itatago? Paano itatago itong nangyaring ito? No? Kanina nga pinag-uusapan namin doon sa holding room. Ang official statistics nasa 3 to 6,000. Pero ang totoo, nasa more than 30,000 ang namatay dyan sa EJKs na yan. So dapat mayroong managot. Unang-una na siguro, ang Pangulo ng Pilipinas. Yon ang nais kong mangyari sa kanya. Masubject kagad siya sa investigation. Kung hindi man ang ICC, yung ating hudikatura, no, ang ating justice system sa Pilipinas, dapat siyang managot.
Thank you so much, Sir David. One more to explain? Okay, Attorney Serapio.
Ako ay nakulong ng panahon ng martial law at ako ay consultant din ng gobyerno na nagsulong ng batas para magbigay ng reparation sa mga nakulong o naging biktima ng martial law. Datapwat sa panig ko, hindi ko kinuha yung pagkakataon na yon dahil sinabi ko, tinindigan ko isa kong pampolitikang paniniwala at hindi ako dapat bayaran dahil ako'y nakulong dahil lamang ako'y nakipaglaban. Hindi nangangahulugang mali yung batas. Binanggit ko lamang yon sapagkat kakaiba naman pagdating dito sa mga naging biktima ng drug war o naging biktima ng mga abuso ng militar o ng pulis. Dapat lang talaga, dapat sila mabigyan ng reparasyon. At kung ano ang nauukol na kaparusahan dahil sa ginawa nilang paglabag ng batas. Maging nung panahon ng Hapon, ng giyera, may reparasyon na natanggap ang ating bansa dahil doon sa nangyaring mga pagpuksa at saka yung mga nangyaring distraksyon ng ating bansa. Kaya tayo binayaran. Mapapansin nyo, meron din reparasyon para doon sa mga sinasabing mga babae na inabuso nung panahon ng giyera na iyon, yung mga comfort women. Kaya yung reparasyon, isang paraan yan para pagbayaran ang kasalanan laban sa tao, kasalanan ng karapatang pantao at kasalanan sa lipunan ng mga gumawa nito. Kaya ako'y sumasang-ayon doon. Dapat pagdating doon sa pampolitika nga na paniniwala, para hindi mawala yung talagang halaga nung tinindigan mo, no? Ay huwag ka magpabayad para doon. Yun ang akin po naging paninindigan. Salamat po.
Thank you so much po, no? Sa ganitong issue, I think ang pinakakawawa dito ay yung pamilya.
Yes.
Pamilya na naiwan. So, kailangan natin bigyan sila ng tulong pa rin.
And yung tulong na pwede natin ibigay bilang mga botante ay sa May 9.
Yes.
Kung accountability hinahanap natin, yung mga enablers ng drug war na ito, doon natin ibigay ang accountability para sa kanila.
Yeah. So, bumoto ng tama on May 9. Ngayon, dito na tayo sa huling trending topic number 10. Is it right to allow young people to join progressive groups at mag-participate sa mga rallies at protests? Yes or no?
Green if yes, red if no. Please raise your boards in 3, 2, and 1. Consensus yes.
Say yes.
Professor Bello, would you like to begin?
Well, konti-konti lang naman ang nag-hold na dapat hindi sila payagan mag-rally. At alam naman natin ito kung sino, especially the Philippine military and the NTF-ELCAC. At kailangan, we should stop the Philippine military having a veto on human rights in this country. Tama na yan. No? They have been the main force that has been standing in the way of people advocating human rights and people's rights and democracy. Sa military mind, every protest is a communist protest. Every protest is a terrorist one. So, ganyan yung pag-iisip ng ating militar. And yung NTF-ELCAC, oh my God, useless but dangerous agency na ang nangyayari dyan is that they go after human rights advocates and then brand them as terrorists. No? So let's disband the NTF-ELCAC and ilagay na natin yung 7 or 9 billion pesos that has been allocated to it. Ilagay na natin sa mga social programs, no? Na kailangan ng bansa. At the other thing is, let's get rid of the anti-terror bill. Kasi, I mean, the anti-terror bill, I mean, with its provision of 24 days warrantless arrest and detention when you cannot have access to anybody, that is really very dangerous to human rights. In 24 days, they can extract a confession, from anybody. So let's get rid of this anti-terror bill.
Thank you,
Law.
Professor. Thank you, Professor Bello. Last one for this round, Sir David.
More than yung doon sa sinasabi na dapat bang bigyan ng karapatan, inherent yan eh. Hindi na yan kailangang isulat kung karapatan mo yan o hindi. Inherent yon. So, kanina nga yung kwentuhan ko doon sa mga kasama ko doon sa kwarto, sinasabi ko na yung talino, yung pagiging kritikal ng kabataan, no? Na i-enhance yan hindi sa loob ng classroom, sa labas. Ang tunay na laboratorio ng inyong natututunan sa loob ng silid-aralan ay nandoon sa labas. Nandoon yung katotohanan. Kung gusto mong malaman kung totoo yung pinag-uusapan nyo sa loob ng classroom, tignan mo kung ano nangyayari sa lansangan. No? Kaya ito, inherent to sa bawat isa na yung ipakita, yung pagiging kritikal, no? Matuto sa mga nangyayari sa kasaysayan at kung ano yung mga nangyayari sa lansangan. No? Doon mo lang mapapagtanto kung totoo ba yung itinuro sa iyo ng iyong guro. Dahil nakita mo na nangyayari doon sa lansangan. Ano? Yun yung aming, nung kami bata, talagang sinikap namin na matutunan. No? Kung tama ba o hindi ang itinuro ng aming mga guro sa pamamagitan ng pagpoprotesta, pagrarally, at pakikisalamuha sa mga ordinaryong tao. Doon lang namin nalalaman kung totoo ba o hindi. Kaya dapat hindi na ito pag-usapan kung karapatan, bibigyan ba ng karapatan ang kabataan na mag-rally o sumama sa mga protesta. Inherent yan sa atin. Kung ang feeling natin dapat tayo'y nasa lansangan, gawin na natin at wag na tayo maghintay kung tayo ay bibigyan ng karapatan pa o hindi ng Estado para dito. Salamat po.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, very quickly.
Quick rejoinder. I would encourage our young people to express themselves beyond the norms of what some people would say civility. That is through the channels of our leadership. If indeed there are issues that needs to be protested, if there are issues that needs to be proposed by the duly established institutions at kailangan po nating lumabas sa lansangan upang magprotesta, let us do so. But let us do so responsibly. Let us not use these rights as if it was unlimited. Let us be practical and pragmatic and always make credible claims in opposing institutional policies and programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Last for Attorney Sarapio.
Yung usapin ito ay nakabatay sa interest ng national security at human rights. Sa ibang mga bansa, ang mga iba't ibang administrasyon kung minsan ay oriented sila towards national security. So a lot of their policies are actually geared towards that. On the other hand, if a particular administration puts more emphasis on human rights, then the way they will approach their governance will be founded on human rights. Why am I saying that? There has to really be a balance also, especially in the case of our persons here who are offering ourselves to be the second highest official of the land. We will be faced with issues of national security and also of issues of human rights. Contextualize then your concern, the young people, on the right to join progressive groups and the right to express your sentiments about a particular situation. you have to also frame it in that context in order to strike a balance. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attorney. I'd like to somehow synthesize yung sinabi nila, no? Dapat makibahagi tayo, magsalita at umaksyon sa mga nangyayari sa ating paligid. Kasi it's a right. It's one of our rights. And unfortunately, not all people could exercise the right. So, bigay na natin ito sa kanila. Tayo na yung magsalita para sa kanila. That's what they are saying.
Alright. Maraming salamat po sa inyong mga sagot. At dyan po nagtatapos ang part 2 ng ating forum. Pero Audrey, talagang nakita natin no, na maraming mga issues na hindi mo masasagot ng oo o hindi lamang. May mga iba't ibang issues kanina na nahati yung ating mga candidates sa usapin ng sex education, sa mining, sa juvenile delinquency. Pero ang maganda dito, marami ring mga issues na nag-consensus ang lahat. Kaya dito natin nakikita yung value ng mga debates and mga forums kasi mas nahihimay natin yung tindig ng mga kandidato sa mga issues na ito dahil hindi naman sila puposisyon dyan para lang sa kapangyarihan. Nandyan sila para tumugon sa mga issue ng lipunan.
I agree. And dito din natin nakita on how much they studied these issues and kung gaano sila kahanda para pagsilbihan tayong lahat. So maraming salamat sa ating mga kandidato. Kulang man tayo sa oras para talagang mas ma-discuss natin yung mga issues na to. I hope na yung audience natin ay nagte-take down notes tulad namin ni Jules para sa third part ng ating forum ay makapagtanong kayo o makahingi ng clarification sa mga naging sagot ng ating mga kandidato.
Tama, Audrey. At pwede rin nating itanong yung mga hindi natin napag-usapan na mga issues sa top 10 trending topics. Pero for now, we'll have another brief 10-minute break before we proceed to the next part of the forum. Please stay tuned. This is Pili Mo, Pili Ko, Pilipino, the Youth Vote 2022 Vice Presidential Forum.
Mahalagang gampanan mo ang iyong parte sa malayang halalan. Mahalagang mabantayan ito dahil sa isang boto magsisimula ang pagbabago sa bayan. Maging non-free volunteer at sama-sama nating bantayan itong bagong pahina ng ating kasaysayan. Bantayan ng boto, bantayan ng bayan.
Tinatayang mahigit 60 milyong Pilipino ang maaaring bumoto sa 2022. Pero isa pa rin sa mga paulit-ulit na problema tuwing eleksyon ay ang kakulangan ng partisipasyon ng mga mamamayan. Marami rin ang bumoboto base sa pangalan o personalidad ng kandidato at hindi dahil sa kakayahan o plataporma nito. Dagdag pa dito ang malaking pagsubok na dala ng COVID-19 pandemic.
The government is no longer just facing the challenges of upholding a free and fair election. More importantly now, we all face the challenge of ensuring safe elections for Filipino voters so that turnout will be strong and the voice of the people will be heard.
Dahil dito, nabuo ang Participate, isang non-partisan, pro-democracy coalition na naglalayong palakasin at pagtibayin ang partisipasyon ng mga Pilipino sa mga politikal na gawain. Hangarin ng Participate na ipaalam sa bawat Pilipino na may karapatan itong bumoto ng walang takot at walang pandaraya at malaya itong makiisa sa mga pagsasanay na magpapabuti sa bayan.
Kung may nakita po tayong paraan para mag-improve ang ating gobyerno, magsalita po tayo, makibahagi po tayo, mag-participate po tayo sa pagpapatakbo ng ating gobyerno. Ganyan po ang paraan sa isang demokrasya.
Ang Participate ay binubuo ng mahigit 2,000 grupo mula sa iba't ibang sektor sa pangunguna ng NGO at empower legal services.
So doing, we hope our knowledge community will be able to do scientific research that generates insights and knowledge on innovations and appropriate solutions to address the emerging issues and overcome in participating in the election.
Higin ang access sa impormasyon para sa mas matalinong pagboto.
If we haven't registered, let's not meet the mad rush for the deadlines come September 30. We are 1 year before the elections. Know the issues, know the election issues, know the issues that are close to your community and also national issues.
At suportahan ang iba pang mga grupong nagtutulak ng reforma sa halalan. Naniniwala ang Participate na ang isang ligtas, patas at malayang halalan ay abot kamay kung ang bawat isa sa atin ay magtutulungan upang makamit ito. Kaya naman ang panawagan, makiisa, makialam, makilahok. Participate. Alamin kung ano ang mga kasalukuyang ginagawa ng Participate. Bumisita lamang sa www.inclusivedemocracy.ph at i-follow ang Participate social media accounts.
Ang pagboto ng mamamayan ay higit pa sa isang oportunidad na maihayag ang ating tinig. Ang pagboto ng mamamayan ay isang karapatan na hindi dapat masayang. Maging NAFREL volunteer para ipaglaban ang ating karapatan at tinig. Bantayan ng boto, bantayan ng bayan.
Magandang araw, ako si Caloidinio. Invite namin kayo na maging part ng Tamang Kandidato campaign. Ang Tamang Kandidato ay voter education program na tumutulong na maging maingat at discerning ang mga Pilipino sa pagpili ng kandidato sa eleksyon. Pansin niyo ba na maraming Pilipino ang attracted sa magagandang pangako ng mga kandidato? Marami ang halos hindi na nag-iisip. Tumataya na lang sa sikat o umaayon na lang sa gusto ng iba o kung sino ang malaki ang bigay. Pero sa huli, korap pala ang politiko. Napapako na ang pangako, ninanakawan pa ang kaban ng bayan. Sa Tamang Kandidato, binibigyan natin ng emphasis ang values sa pagpili ng kandidato. Sa pamamagitan ng personal reflection at mga group discussion, encourage tayo na pumili ayon sa ating mga values bilang mga Pilipino at ayon sa ating faith sa Diyos. Dahil dito nagkakaroon ng pagbabago sa pagpili ng kandidato na mas tapat sa kalooban ng Diyos. Subok na ito noong 2019 at nakapartner natin ang maraming churches, faith-based organizations, educational institutions at maging mga private companies sa Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao. Ayon sa journalist na si John Neri, ang Tamang Kandidato daw ay ang best na voter education program na nakita niya. Gusto naming lumawak ang reach ng Tamang Kandidato campaign sa online learning at social media at kailangan namin ng tulong ninyo. Kung kayo ay church or eskwelahan or community organization o kahit private company at gusto ninyo magkaroon ng voter education sa grupo ninyo, mag-partner po tayo. Kung kayo ay may experience sa pag-facilitate ng small groups or mag-host ng school or church events, kung may experience kayo sa training, pwede kayong maging accredited facilitator ng Tamang Kandidato. Kung marunong kayong magsulat o magaling sa graphic design or sanay sa pag-produce ng video o kaya ay mahusay sa social media management, pwede tayo magtulungan para sa social media campaign ng Tamang Kandidato Program. Message nyo kami sa Tamang Kandidato Facebook page or email nyo kami sa tamaka2022@gmail.com.
And welcome back, everyone. This is part 3 of Pili Mo, Pili Ko, Pilipino, the Youth Vote 2022 Vice Presidential Forum. Ang mga kabataan, awit.
But, teka lang, Jules. Mayroon akong gustong mangyari muna or gusto kong makita ito yung major initiative ng mga kabataang Lasaliano, syempre with the help of our professors and advisors here in Lasal.
Nabalitaan ko ngayon, Audrey, what a way to engage the youth to participate in this election.
Oo naman. Importante talaga sa amin ang election na to. That's why we decided to create the Pili na Pinas Interactive Application. So panoorin po natin ito para mabigyan tayo ng mga kaunting teaser on what the app is all about.
Ayan, ang ganda, Audrey. Yung Pili na Pinas, parang pwede mong i-swipe right yung pinakagusto mong kandidato. Very interactive. May mga fact checks, leveled ang playing field, at may matching ng values mo at values ng kandidato.
Definitely. Para siyang all-in-one app na one-stop shop ng ating mga voters. So, super cool niya. I can't wait for it to go live. At sana naman mag-participate ang ating mga kabataang Lasaliano.
I agree, Audrey. Guys, agree ba kayo dito? Game kayo na gamitin ang app na to, website na to?
Yes, yes.
Okay, alright.
Okay, so let's move forward na, Jules, kasi I think marami ng tanong ang ating mga audience. So, dito na tayo sa part 3 of our forum. Sa part na ito, we are opening the floor for questions, reactions, and insights from our audience here in the venue mula sa comment section ng mga nanonood sa Rappler. At Jules, tulad nga ng sabi ko kanina, meron din tayong mga videos na ipinadala sa atin para sa kanilang mga katanungan.
At syempre para sa ating audience, una po ninyong ibigay ang inyong pangalan, edad at paaralan o organisasyon na pinanggagalingan. Sunod po ay sabihin para kanino sa mga kandidato ang inyong tanong o kung ito ay tanong para sa lahat.
hihingan din natin ng tulong ang isa sa mga student leaders ng De La Salle para ipasa sa atin ang mga tanong na mula sa comment section ng Rappler at yung mga galing naman sa mga ipinadalang videos.
Paalala lang po, maging direct to the point sa inyong mga tanong at siguruhing hindi pa ito na itatanong sa ating naunang bahagi ng forum. Maliban na lang kung ang hinihingi ninyo ay pagkaklaro sa naging sagot ng ating mga kandidato. At paalala rin po sa ating mga candidates, mayroon lamang tayong 1 minuto para sagutin ang tanong. At 1 minute naman para sa dagdag na katanungan o reaksyon sa pahayag ng kapwa kandidato. We'd also like to give 1 minute para naman sa feedback o reaction ng nagtanong from our audience.
Okay, so Jules, umpisahan na natin.
Let's go.
Pero sa tingin ko may maganda tayo umpisahan eh. What if umpisahan natin doon sa mga ipinadalang videos? Kasi galing pa itong mga videos na to sa mga malalayong lugar at sayang naman kung hindi natin maririnig itong mga to lalo na kung magkulang tayo ng oras. So what do you think, Jules?
Game ako dyan, Audrey. Sige, let's hear the first question from the recorded videos.
Hello po, this is Catherine Lapis, USG Assistant Secretary from LaSalle University, Ozamis City, and this is my question. Many Filipinos are still living in poverty, despite going through many politicians who promise to alleviate their plight. Do you think Filipinos are hardworking enough, or is the society failing them? What do you think is the missing ingredient, and how would you become different from those politicians?
Okay, I guess this question could be answered by
anyone.
Okay, who'd like to begin? Okay, Sir Lopez, to be followed by Sir David.
We came up with a 10-point socio-economic development and political reform agenda, specifically to help build a strong, just, and progressive nation. And within the context of this 10-point socio-economic development and political reform agenda is a 3-pronged economic recovery strategy that proposes a new omnibus investment code to improve on the way we do business, enhance the productivity of our various industries and our workers, among others. And we also propose a bankruptcy law that is simple and streamlined so as to provide a legal framework for our struggling micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises to enable them to recover from the repercussions of the pandemic. And lastly, in order to help rebuild their businesses and ensure the continuity of productive economic enterprise, we should...
Thank you so much, Sir Lopez. Apologies for that. Time's up. The next one to answer is Sir David.
The structure of power. Yun ang pangunahin nating problema. Yung struktura ng kapangyarihan sa ating lipunan na nagbibigay ng kahirapan sa atin. At yung mutually reinforcing phenomenon ng culture of poverty. Dahil yung ating mahihirap, dahil sa kanilang kahirapan, kumakapit sila doon sa mga taong nasa puder. Yung mga tao naman na nasa puder, pinapanatili yung struktura ng kapangyarihan na ganyan na lamang para magpatuloy ang kanilang paghahari. Kaya kailangan pag-aralan natin maigi ito. At pumili tayo ng mga leader na nagsasabi na itong mga struktura to ng kapangyarihan na ito ay dapat gibain, palitan, at tignan natin kung ano ang maari nating gawin doon sa kultura ng kahirapan na nagdidiin ng maigi sa ating mahihirap na magpatuloy ang kanilang kahirapan. Wala tayong masyadong oras, pero yun yung dalawang bagay na nais kong bigyan ng emphasis.
Thank you, Sir David. Okay, last one.
The issue of poverty is a concern of the many, whereas the system is ruled by the few. So immediately you can see the incompatibility between the interest and concern of the many and those of the few. And therefore, I would have to agree that we will need to change the power structure if you really want to eradicate poverty. That's one of the reasons why our political party, the Katipunan ng Kamalayang Kayumanggi, has not a programmatic approach to this situation, but a process approach. We have to transition from the rule of the few, yung paghahari ng iilan, to the rule of the many, which is the real democratic system that we would want to establish. Otherwise, poverty will continue to persist. Ang dami-dami na pong mga administrasyon, almost 7 decades na yan, palipat-lipat, papalit-palit, paulit-ulit na lamang to, hindi natutugunan yan. Hardworking ang mga Pilipino, pero mali ang sistema na umiiral sa ngayon. Salamat po.
Thank you, Attorney Serapio. We have a last one answer, Audrey, from Professor Bello. Go ahead, sir.
Sa tingin ko may dalawang malalang problema sa atin. Unang-una, yung di pagkapantay-pantay. If you have a situation where about 3% of the population owns and has control over 50% of the wealth, you have a real problem, because that is really very poverty producing. The other thing that we really must put in a historical context was the indiscriminate opening up of our economy since the Marcos period, which resulted in the destruction of our manufacturing, and since 1994, when we joined the WTO, the destruction of our agriculture. So with people having no opportunities to go into manufacturing or agriculture, they've gone abroad. So we've got to really address those two really big problems.
Maraming salamat, Professor Bello.
Thank you
Audrey,
so
back to
much.
you.
So let's move on to our second video question.
Good day, Vice Presidential candidates. I am Adam Palo, the Executive President of De La Salle Medical and Health Sciences Institutional Student Council. For my question, this is regarding our access to universal healthcare. Last July 27, 2020, Senate President Vicente Soto III and Senator Panfilo Lacson filed Senate Resolution number 475 calling for the constitution of the Senate Committee of the Whole to probe the alleged rampant corruption, incompetence, inefficiency within the PhilHealth. Considering these corruption issues, what actions do you recommend Philippines execute to avoid situations like this from happening again, and to support the Filipinos in terms of insurance or accessibility to universal healthcare?
Thank you so much, Adam. Who'd like to answer
Anyone
first?
from our candidates? Okay,
Mr.
Mr.
Lopez.
We have to improve on our public health and safety institutions, systems, and infrastructure. The real problem is not just a matter of policy. We don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough hospitals, we do not have enough political will to upgrade the public health programs of this republic. And we could address this because there is enough public funds that was allocated through the Bayanihan Act 1 and 2 to actually provide for all these necessities, especially in this time of pandemic. Now, on the matter of having more doctors, why don't we provide more scholarships to have more doctors and require them to spend their time here in this country? It's something that escapes my mind why we are not putting our money where it is necessary.
Thank you so much, Sir Lopez, Professor Bello, Sir David, and then Attorney Serapio.
Yes. Well, the healthcare system in this country, unfortunately, is in a mess. But we already have passed the universal healthcare law. What should happen is that implementation of it in a just and equitable and good way should really be speeded up at this point in time. The second thing that I would say is let's focus on primary and preventive health care and not just deal with a situation when the disease is already there. So kailangan talaga mapondohan yan. Pangatlo, kailangan talaga magbuhos tayo ng efforts and resources, especially now that you have the Mandanas ruling, to the LGUs, and really have the LGUs cooperate with the national government in really putting together a good primary preventive health care program. And then we must really, really support our frontliners and give them the respect and the resources that they really need.
Thank you, Professor Bello. Sir David?
Nasagot na ni Professor Bello yung sasabihin ko. Actually, dapat yung healthcare system natin ma-reorient na siya, no? Mag-shift na siya from the more curative to preventive talaga. No? In fact, ang iniisip ko dyan, yung mga doktor natin, mga nurses, etc., healthcare workers, i-assign by zones. Kapag ka dun sa mga zones na yon walang nagkakasakit, mas malaki yung ibibigay natin na compensation sa kanila. Yun yung nakikita kong mas importante. Ang nangyayari kasi ngayon, parating kailangan natin maraming ospital, kailangan natin maraming gamot, etc. Basic sanitation lang, hindi natin magawa. No? So yung cleanliness and sanitation, pagka naipaamulat natin sa ating mga mamamayan, bawas na yung magkakasakit. No? At nandiyan dyan ang ating mga doktor, nurses, etc. by zones. No? Kung walang magkakasakit doon, mas malaki ang dapat nating ibayad sa kanila. Yun yung aking pananaw sa bagay na yan.
Thank you, Sir David. Attorney Serapio.
The laws are in place. The funds have been allocated. Why is it not working? It's because of the system again. In a highly centralized, unitary system, you're expecting the top management to address all the issues when it comes to healthcare. And you expose precisely the healthcare system to more corruption. So the real situation is the over-centralization of power once again is the cause for the unresponsive system that we have when it comes to healthcare. So federalization, when you distribute power to the different regions, you essentially now are able to apply the principle of what's called subsidiarity. The problem arises from a given local situation, the solution can be provided there. Moreover, we can develop our own organic-based pharmaceutical industry in a situation such as a federal setup.
Thank you, Attorney Serapio. Very quick, 15 seconds, sir.
I-add ko lang dun kay sinabi ni Mr. David at Attorney Serapio. Unang-una, dapat talaga ma-implement yung Cheaper Medicines Act na demands that doctors in fact prescribe generic medicines. Hanggang ngayon, ang dami mga doktor violate that, no? Are giving
Okay, thank you, sir. You can add more later in your final statement. Audrey, back to you.
Thank you so much. Gusto kong i-highlight yung sagot nila. No? Lalong-lalo na itong tanong na to, very, very relevant siya now na we're in a medical crisis. And kailangan natin ng mas malaking pansin dito sa ating medical industry or sa medical field. Lalong-lalo na napatapos na tayo sa pandemic. And who knows, there could be another crisis. And I believe that could be a mental health crisis. So maraming salamat po. Let's go to our third video question.
Hello and good evening. I'm Arian Mondehar, Head Coordinator of Streets to Schools Ilocos. Regarding the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program, one of its main thrusts is improving primary education. However, it is conditional for Filipino families to enjoy these benefits. My question is, how can this program become more accessible to achieve universal primary education? And how can it assure its stakeholders that there will be checks and balances in place? Thank you.
Maraming salamat for that question. Sino pong gusto mauna? Professor Bello.
Well, unang-una, we should look at the Pantawid Pamilya program as just a beginning, no? And we really must move towards making assistance non-conditional. Tama na yung conditional health and educational requirements, no? We should really move to a national social protection plan that guarantees all Filipinos an income, a living income, irrespective of who they are. This is what so many countries are now moving into, a guaranteed income plan. This is the future that we must bring the Philippines to. Kasama na roon, hindi lang income, pero guaranteed health benefits and guaranteed educational benefits. So let's move away from the conditional cash transfer to real guaranteed income as national social protection. Thank you.
Salamat, Professor Bello. From this side, anyone? Okay, Sir Lopez.
there's a lot of room for improvement in our primary education system. I saw this as a student, as a pupil at the Moncada North Elementary School, where I pursued my elementary studies up to grade 3. And if I were to compare this to the exclusive schools that we find in Manila and those that I saw in California, they are worlds apart. And definitely, in the process of educating our young people at a tender age, they could absorb more information, they could absorb more complex lessons if they were given better education and training materials, including the access to internet and better training kits that are probably both video and the traditional way of teaching.
All right. Thank you so much for your answers to all our candidates. Hanggang doon lang muna tayo for the video questions. Let's now move on to the questions from our audience. Audrey, back to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jules. Thank you so much to our candidates. Now, let's ask. Okay, may pila na pala tayo dito. Umpisa natin kay ate. Please do move here. And again, introduce yourself. Where did you come from? And all your details. And yan, your question.
Isang mapagpalang araw po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si AJ Tablada, representative of the Student Media Organizations of De La Salle University. Given that we have 31 days left before Election Day, for you, are survey results important and why? Considering the recent survey results, how would you maximize the rest of the campaign period to improve your campaign? Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much. Okay, to our candidates.
Okay, let's repeat the question. So this is about kung mahalaga ba ang survey results para sa mga kandidato natin at paano nila i-maximize yung remaining 31 days. Okay, this is addressed to anyone. Okay. Sir David, Sir Bello, and then this.
In the absence of any other quantitative measure, we rely on surveys. But more than that, sa akin kasi, sa puntong ito, alam ko na yung mga figures at alam ko na kung may pag-asa pa o wala. Kaya sa akin, ang aking panawagan ay parating mag-usap-usap na tayo. Yung may pinakamagandang tsansa na talunin si Bongbong Marcos at yung may pinakamagandang tsansa na talunin si Sara Duterte, yun na ang ating itaguyod na kandidato. Kasi kung patuloy pa rin natin na gagawin na nagtatagisan tayo dito ng talino, bandang huli nakanganga tayong lahat dahil yung ayaw makita kung ano ang meron silang talino ay yun yung nanalo, no? Kaya sa akin talaga I'm still repeating my prayer to all the candidates na magsama-sama na tayo para talunin natin si Bongbong Marcos at si Sara Duterte.
Thank you, Sir David. Professor Bello, you have an answer, and then to this side.
Unang-una, mga kasama ko sa Lasal at elsewhere, may limitations talaga ang survey. If you remember, in the 2016 elections, all surveys in the United States predicted that Hillary Clinton would win. And by a landslide. But what happened on November 3 was Trump won. No? So may limitations talaga ang survey because at one point surveys become part of what you're measuring. No? And some people give you the answer that you think the surveyor wants. No? So given such a fluid situation at this point, while I respect surveys, I will also see their limitations at this point. No? So, as for me and Calyodi, we will continue to be in this struggle, okay? And we are still confident that there will be a good outcome for us.
Thank you, Professor Bello. Do you have inputs from the side?
First and foremost, I don't believe in surveys for the reason that 1,200 or 2,400 or 3,600 people ask on their preference for a particular candidate, which is often commercialized and guided, should that serve as a basis on who will come out as winner in an elections. we are 31 days, we have 31 days to go before the Filipino people will make a choice on who their preference is to become the next president and vice president of this country. And on my part, my primary task in participating in these elections is to be able to send out the message of real change and reform, offer an alternative program of government that could help uplift the lives of our country and our people. And so we will fight on, we will carry on, and eventually we will win.
Thank you, Sir Lopez. Lastly, Attorney Serapio.
Ang dahilan po namin sa paghahandog ng aming sarili para sa panunungkulan ay dahil nga sa tinitingnan namin na ang kalagayan ay labanan o banggaan hindi ng mga personalidad, kundi ng sistema. It is actually a battle between the status quo and real change. And as a result of that, and because of the experience that we've had with so many administrations, we're trying to offer these experiences to our people so that we can finally really move the system forward and leave the status quo. Therefore, we will not, just like my friend here, we will not abandon our struggle. Moreover, for the first time, we have a Muslim candidate for president. And the Muslim candidate will most probably mobilize the strongest support that we have. It's about 7 million Muslims who will actually be marching behind him. With that, together with the Christian votes, with the Katutubo votes, all the base of our party, we also believe that we are marching towards victory. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Serapio.
Thank you so much.
Audrey, mag-feedback ata, no? Yung ating nag-question. Go ahead.
Maraming salamat po at nakatutuwa pong marinig ang inyong kasagutan at nakita po namin ang inyong sinseridad sa paglilingkod sa taong bayan bilang mga kandidato. Good luck po sa inyong kampanya at sana po mas marami pang makaalam ng inyong mga plataforma para sa halalang ito. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you. Audrey,
Well
siguro in the interest of time for our friends who will be asking questions, siguro they could choose 1 to 2 candidates kung sino
Okay.
magsasagot.
Sige, pili na lang kayo. Let's move on to our next. Thank you so much. Please do introduce yourself and your question.
Okay, hi. Isang magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Tilda Oreta, chairperson po ng Kabataan Party List DLSU. So, directed po ito dito po sa side na, dito na lang po sa side na to. No? So, yung question ko po, though this has been a lively discussion for quite a while now, the discussion on the youth's mental health has never been louder than in the midst of the pandemic. In the 2 years that we've been in quarantine, the youth's, especially the students' mental health, have been greatly affected by the stress and isolation brought upon by the pandemic. Despite having a law on national mental health care services and institutions remain severely underfunded in the Philippines. As was mentioned by Audrey, another health crisis is imminent, and this one is a mental health crisis. In line with this, how will you, as a vice president, be able to address the worsening mental health situation for the youth?
I love the question. So, candidates on this side, maybe we could start with Professor Bello and then followed by Sir.
Well, I definitely think that the question is extremely important. I think that so far, many of our proposals have touched on COVID-19 and the importance of primary and preventive health care, preventive rather than curative, and basically a major transformation into a participatory mode of our system of healthcare. One of the things that I'm glad you have really brought up, because it has not been adequately addressed even by my party's program, is students and youth mental health. And that is something that I appreciate you having brought out, and we will integrate that and consult you on how to bring this to a central role in our health program.
Thank you, Sir Bello. Sir David, lastly.
Alam mo, yung mental health issue, hindi naman bago yan eh. Bago pa nangyari itong pandemic, no? Meron ng malaking bahagdan ng ating populasyon ang nagsasuffer dyan. Hindi lang kabataan. Yung nagtatrabaho sa mga call centers. Grabe, no? Yung mental health issue dyan. Matagal na naming ina-advocate na dagdagan na talaga ang pondo para ma-address yan. At the same time, obligahin yung mga kumpanya na nag-i-empleyo ng ating mga tao na nagsasuffer na ng ganyan, na buhusan din ng tamang pondo para magkaroon ng resolution yung problema na yun. Yun yung essentially, no? Well, kailangan na talaga. Kaya sa susunod na administrasyon, dapat unang-una nabigyan ng malaking alokasyon yung bagay na yan para tayo naman kumbaga, nauna na, no? Bago pa mangyari yung worst, naunahan na natin, ma-address natin, ma-arrest na natin kagad. Yun lang.
Thank you, Sir David. Audrey, back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you also for your question. I really love the question kasi very timely nga ang ating mental health crisis and hindi siya nawawala. Dati pa siya nangyayari and it's continuously growing, especially may pandemic tayo ngayon. So maraming salamat. Do you have any follow-ups?
Maraming salamat po, no? Malinaw po na na-realize nyo rin po ng mga kandidato no, na natanong kung ano po yung kahalagahan ng mismong pagtugon sa mental health dahil napapabayaan nga po siya, na-acknowledge na po yun ng mga kandidato. Kung kaya naman po, sana sa mga susunod po ay ma-acknowledge po natin ito at maisama po natin sa ating pagpaplano para sa healthcare, para sa universal healthcare. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat. Now let's move on to our next question. Please do introduce yourselves and do ask the question.
Isang militanteng pagbati po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Latrell Felix mula sa UP Diliman University Student Council.
Good evening po. I'm Iya Trinidad from UP Baguio University Student Council.
Last January 2021, the UP DND Accord was unilaterally abrogated by the Department of National Defense. Since then, red tagging of students has been intensified, which put our students at risk from further state attacks and surveillance, given that the anti-terrorism law has been enacted.
In addition, yung book purging po, actually it happened in universities in Cordillera, such as Kalinga State University. Just to contextualize, in Baguio, there are actually student leaders and student organizations being red tagged and even targeted by local government units through persona non grata campaigns. So with that said, we just want to reaffirm or to reiterate our stand that sa ligtas na pagbabalik eskwela, kasama na po doon yung protection namin to our democratic rights and welfare as well as academic freedom.
So these are among the many attacks done on academic freedom and towards students in universities. So these are the questions. If you were to be elected as Vice President, what can you do to defend the academic freedom of higher educational institutions in the country?
Who would you like to address the question?
This is addressed to all of the Vice Presidentiables.
Okay, choose 1 to 2.
You choose one, I choose one.
Okay, let's go to Vice Presidential Walden Bello po.
Well, thank you for the question, and I think you know the answer, which is we must really, in an administration with Calio and me, we will make sure, that the military does not step even 1 foot into the universities. And that among the first things that must be done here is to reverse the abrogation of the DND-UP agreement. That was done on early last year, and to bring back the agreement of the military not stepping in. Secondly, we must really do away with this red tagging that is causing such dangers. And among other things, we have a peace plan that would revoke the anti-terrorism law and abolish NTFL-CAC, which is the source of many of this destruction of academic freedom that's taking place.
Thank you so much, Professor Bello. Do you not...
Hello? The other one po is Sir Manny Lopez.
Thank you very much. Being an alumnus of the University of the Philippines, during my time, when such circumstances were happening inside the campus, we called on our more distinguished and highly esteemed alumni members to help address the issue. And what came out from our appeal was to empower the UP Security Unit to ensure the safety and the welfare of the students inside the campus. And so, in due course, there was no need for the military to actually come in and intervene or interfere in the affairs of the university. So I believe there are many members of the UP alumni community who would help address this problem of unnecessary interference and militarization of our beloved university and alma mater.
Thank you so much. Very quick, sir. As former UPLB chair, go ahead.
Yes, as a student and a teacher sa UP, alam niyo naman na yung sagot ko dyan. Ano? Kaya yung moral imperative now is to defeat Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte para mawala na yung mga bagay na yan. At magkaroon tayo ng pagbabago doon sa nakaugalian na nating academic freedom, no? Sa pamantasan, hindi lang ng pamantasan ng Pilipinas, kundi sa lahat ng eskwelahan sa buong bansa.
Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you so much to our candidates. Thank you so much for your question. Now let's move on to our next. Please get the mic. All right, thank you so much. Please do introduce yourself and ask your question.
All right. Magandang gabi po sa ating mga Vice Presidentiables. Ako si Calvin Almazan, current Executive Vice President ng National Union of Students of the Philippines, and subsequently po a third-year legal management student of the De La Salle University. So for our Vice Presidentiables, this is an educational issue actually that we are all affected by. So moving on, we know that educational prices increase yearly because educational institutions constantly implement their tuition fee increases every year. To note, even the pandemic did not push the government to intervene and implement across-the-board tuition fee moratoriums to alleviate expenses. With the educational system currently transitioning to the face-to-face setup, what are your thoughts on quality education being increasingly inaccessible, and how, as Vice President, would you use your influence to tackle this growing inaccessibility? So for this question is directed to Mr. Lopez and Mr. Serapio.
All right. Mr. Lopez first.
Thank you very much for that very important question. On the matter of improving the quality of education towards cultural excellence, I believe that we should align our education development strategy along the lines of our national interest and development goals. Moreover, we have to tie it up with the requirements of the industry to develop the necessary skills in order to provide the propellant to ensure our industrial development among other business enterprises and endeavors. And lastly, I believe that we should empower the students by providing them not only with free tuition fees, but also by providing the necessary means to enable them to afford and continue their education. And we can do this through student loans that is of low interest and payable upon graduation. That is the cornerstone of my quality education program.
Thank you, Sir Lopez. Attorney Serapio, go ahead.
Ang usapin ng edukasyon o quality education has something to do with the educational system, which is actually divided. Maski noong panahon namin, meron tinatawag ng mga elitist schools at kasama kayo, kasama eskwelahan na aking pinag-graduate yan din, kasama rin ng UP. Ang kaibahan sa UP, subsidized ang tuition. At ngayon, libre na nga rin ang tuition. Kaya yung pagkakahati ng isang tinatawag na quality education galing sa mga educational institutions tulad ng Lasal, Sambeda, Ateneo at lahat, ay medyo naapektuhan na yung mga public schools naman ngayon ay halos libre na lahat ang kanilang tuition. So paano natin babalansehin yung equal access, so-called, to quality education? Should there be subsidies also for educational institutions like that of LaSalle? Aside from that, the educational system must be responsive to the imperatives of the times. Kung hindi responsive yon, hindi rin magkakaroon ng quality education. Thank you.
Okay, Audrey chiming in, Professor Bello, 15 seconds.
Alam nyo yung straw bill, I was one of the authors of the straw bill. Hindi pa napapasa, student rights bill. If we get to Malacanang, this is one of the first laws that we will pass to recognize student rights as well as faculty rights and deal precisely with this problem that you have, which is nava-violate ang student rights, including on the question of pension, tuition.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Bello. Thank you so much, Calvin. Do you have any follow-ups?
Okay, for our Vice Presidentiables, thank you po. Sana po for your campaigns and yung mga sinabi niyo po na answers, manalo man po ang matalo, tuloy-tuloy po yung campaigns niyo if ever moving forward from the election. So thank you po to our Vice Presidentiables.
Thank you so much, Calvin. Now let's proceed to our next question. And please also do direct your question to only one candidate.
Magandang gabi po. Ako po si Marian mula sa Youth Leadership for Democracy or YouthLED. I work as a development worker on improving civic education and engagement with the youth. My question is for Professor Bello po. Isang vital na programa para sa pagpapalakas ng konsepto ng citizenship at ng pagmamahal sa bansa at mga kapwa nating Pilipino ay ang pagpopromote ng civic education sa ating mga paaralan. Alam naman natin mayroong existing na mga NSTP at service learning program sa ating mga institusyon. Kung ang karamihan ng mga kabataan ay tutol sa ideya ng nagawing requirement o include ang mandatory military service program sa K-12, papaano nyo bilang pangalawang Pangulo ng Pilipinas, kung mahalal po kayo, mapapalakas at gawing kaaya-aya ang civic education o civics para sa aming mga kabataang Pilipino?
Professor Bello?
Well, okay, magandang tanong ito. Alam nyo, kailangan talaga ng civics education that is put into law. We did this with the Marcos Human Rights Victims Compensation Act. Nasama na namin roon na dapat magkaroon ng pag-aaral tungkol sa mga nangyari doon sa martial law, no? And the human rights violations that took place. And that is going to be part of civic education. Unfortunately, it has not been really implemented. So we already have at least part of a law that says that, but we need to expand it, not just as an appendage to one law, but in another law, an independent law that really focuses on the importance and the implementation of civic education and to give people, our students, a historical sense, of the development of the Philippines and the importance, of their participation in creating a truly democratic Philippines.
Thank you, Sir Bello.
Thank you so much.
Hello? Maraming salamat po at kung sino po naman po ang ating mahalal na mga vice-presidente, sana po mas bigyan nating pansin ang pagpapahalaga sa civic education po. Thank you po.
Thank you so much. Now let's proceed to our next question. Please do introduce yourself, ask a question, and choose the candidate to answer it.
Good evening, everyone. I am Trisha Cuarter from the Center for Youth Advocacy and Networking, as well as UP Alianza. This is a question directed towards to Mr. Lopez. So it is in relation to our project that our organization is working on, which is called Inform, Youth-Led Network for the Right to Information. It has the primary goal of combating disinformation. Now going to my question, assume that you are already seated. What would be the concrete plans or systemic ways that your Office of the Vice President of the Philippines, will provide to combat disinformation that's obviously and sickeningly rampant in our country?
Thank you so much.
Hello. First and foremost, I would like to put in place the necessary amendments to our People's Initiative and Referendum Act in order to make it a functional, direct democracy tool that will empower our people. We can do this by putting in the necessary provisions that will make it available, accessible to ordinary citizens to be able to legislate directly, amend, and repeal laws. That is people empowerment. And among the legislations that we could pursue is the Freedom on Information Act. Because as you very well know, what we have now is an executive FOI that is limited to the executive branch of government. Let us encompass the FOI for implementation among local government units, because this is very important considering the implications of the Mandanas petition that has been approved by the Supreme Court. And also, it should include...
Thank you so much, Sir Lopez. Audrey, back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lopez. Do you have any follow-ups?
I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Lopez, and I believe all of our aspirants here are aware that the struggle with disinformation is deeply rooted with the fact that it's very malicious and mostly state-sponsored. So again, thank you very much, and we hope that the youth is hoping that you have the plans to actually turn these into action. So may the best bet win.
Thank you so much. We only have 2 questions left. Let's proceed to our second to the last. Please introduce yourself, ask a question, and then choose a candidate.
Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Alexa Taay mula po sa youth organization na Streets to Schools. Ako po ay ang partnership officers ng aming main branch at currently po nag-expand kami to the different regions, kaya po ako po ang head founder po ng Mimaropa region namin. So earlier po, nabanggit po ng mga candidates natin, they repeatedly expressed po that their views that the change starts with the youth, that the youth has the power, the voice, and the number to make a change in society. So, according naman po sa UNICEF, at least 1.1 million daw po ng mga kabataan or youth natin ngayon ang hindi na po nakapag-enroll sa school due to COVID-19. Marami din po sa portion ng mga ito, yun na force po into child labor, teenage pregnancy, and mental distress that convince them to no longer enroll in school once we go back to face-to-face. What kind of policies should the government enforce to help these children and youth go back to school? And actually po, to add to this question, as experienced by our chapters po, we travel by boat, or we hike to the different mountains, or we travel for hours to reach the far-flung communities in order to teach the children. So, what concrete steps nga po can you give in order to safeguard po the rights of the child and the rights of our fellow youth in order to participate in nation building?
Thank you so much, Jules. Who do you want to
Alex
answer?
po. Sir Serapio na lang po.
Okay, Attorney Serapio.
Yes. Well, the only way for us to really be able to address the situation, and at the risk of being repetitive about it, in the current situation and the current system, that will not be fully be responded to. You will note that even in our budget, education is number 4. Actually, number 1 when it comes to the General Appropriations Act. But much of those money that has been appropriated will go to maintenance. Very few can actually be allocated for programs that will address the issues and concerns that you have just raised. Even in the pandemic law or the Bayanihan 2, education also is very much a priority. A lot of money has been allocated to it. But why is it that it is not possible to process it in this kind of system? Again, because programs are incompatible with the processes and operating systems that is founded on the rule of a few. I am really, really sorry that I have to harp on that, but that's the situation.
Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you so much. Do you have any follow-ups?
So indeed nga po, for whoever will be elected, you will have the power and the resources to make a change in order to help our youth make a change. So we have a lot to think about, so thank you about that.
Thank you so much. Now we are down to our last question. Please do introduce yourself, ask your question, and choose your candidate.
So good evening po sa lahat ng Vice Presidential aspirants. I am AC Garalde from the UPB University Student Council. I'm the current College of Science representative. And my question is directed to Mr. Rizalito Valdez po. So to recall your opening statement regarding your perspective on the various crises that the Filipino youth face today, You mentioned that despite the gravity and depth of the problems we experience, we, quote unquote, need to start from scratch. May we ask for a clarification regarding this phrase, to start from scratch? Does it mean undermining or invalidating the ongoing crisis we experience as the youth and welcoming a new multitude of social issues to add up to those that we are combating in the current time? Thank you po.
Sir David.
Merong proseso dyan. Progressive contextualization. So ang sinasabi ko, we start from scratch. Simply means you build on doon sa mga suliranin na tinitignan natin. No? Hindi ko sinasabing babaliwalain, kundi gagamitin natin bilang reference. Pero ayoko na matali tayo doon sa mga krisis na hinaharap natin at hindi tayo makagalaw. Ang nais ko gawin ay, sige, meron tayong papel na pwedeng sulatan. Blanco muna yan. Umpisahan nating magsulat. Pero hindi natin sinasantabi yung existing na mga problema. Gagamitin natin siya as reference. That's the only way by which we can really address this problem. Kasi masyado na tayong natali. No? Ang hirap na i-untangle. Kaya mag-umpisa na muna tayo na malinaw. Pagkatapos, saka natin tingnan kung ano yung dapat maging sagot dyan sa mga problema na yan.
Maraming salamat po sa clarification niyo regarding the question, and tunay nga pong ang makabagong pagbabago ay nakalaan sa ating mga kamay, nakaabang ito sa ating mga kamay, and best of luck po to all the vice presidential candidates. Thank you po.
Thank you so much, Jules.
Alright, at dito na po nagtatapos ang ating open forum. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng mga nagtanong at maraming ding salamat sa ating mga candidates na game sa pagsagot. Muli po, palakpakan natin ang ating mga vice presidential candidates.
Yes, so maraming salamat po ulit. Pati sa mga nagtanong, magaganda yung mga tanong nila. Ang tatalino ng mga tanong, very relevant and very important na ma-discuss natin para sa araw na ito. At napaka-participative din ang ating audience. So marami akong natutunan talaga.
That's true. Talagang very issue-based. Dapat ito yung maging basehan sa pagpili natin sa May 9. Hindi lang dahil sa apelido, pero dahil maganda ang tindig nila at doable yung tindig nila sa bawat issue.
Definitely agree on that. And gusto ko lang highlight talaga dito is yung usapin sa mental health kasi it's very timely. Meron pa ring stereotypes and stigma that revolves around this, so we must focus on it also.
That's true. Hindi lang sa open forum, kundi sa buong hapon na ito. Sa buong program natin, sobra dami nating natutunan. So once again, thank you so much to our candidates. Alright, I'm sure tulad ko marami sa ating mga kabataan ngayon ang nagkaroon ng kaliwanagan sa kung ano ang kanilang stand sa maraming issues at kung sino ang naisipan nilang nararapat na iboto para sa posisyon ng pangalawang Pangulo ng Pilipinas.
So now that we are near the end of Pili Mo, Pili Ko, Pilipino, the Youth Vote 2022 Vice Presidential Forum, may we again call on our candidates to give their closing statements answering 2 questions.
Okay, the first question is, as the mandate of the Vice President is to succeed the President in case of death, illness, removal of or resignation, the Vice President should always be President ready. Para sa ating mga kandidato, how President ready are you?
Bigat na tanong. We have also a second question. Why should our youth vote for you? Meron po kayong 2 minutes each to give your closing statements.
Okay, simulan po natin kay Mr. David.
Ang baba ng energy level ko kasi nakaupo tayo. Gusto kong tumayo. How President ready? I think yung lahat ng karanasan natin, magmula nang tayo'y bata hanggang tayo'y tumanda, prepared us for these things. No? Nobody can really say na tayong prepared. No? Except na kung babalikan natin yung ating pinag-umpisahan hanggang sa ngayon, doon masasabi ko na posibleng ready ako. No? Pero hindi ko sinasabing ready. Okay, having said that, ayoko na sanang i-promote pa yung aking sarili na iboto nyo ko bilang ikalawang Pangulo. Dahil ang aking pinaguhugutan ng bagay na ito, ang moral, ethical imperative now is to defeat Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte. So sa akin, hindi ko na kailangang i-promote pa yung sarili ko. Napagdaanan ko na lahat yan, yung pinag-uusapan natin dito, nagawa ko na po yan. Pero hindi ako mananalo. Hindi ako mananalo. Kaya hinihingi ko ngayon yung power ng kabataan, kumbinsihin ang ibang mga kandidato na kami magsama-sama para mapanagutan o mabigyan ng kasagutan yung ethical moral imperative na talunin si Bongbong Marcos at si Sara Duterte. Yun ang aking hinihingi sa inyo. Huwag nyo na akong iboto. Hingin nyo na lang sa kapwa ko mga kandidato, pati doon sa mga kumakandidato sa pagkapangulo, na magsama-sama para lang talunin si Bongbong Marcos at sa Sara Duterte. Dahil lahat ng aming sinabi rito, walang mangyayari kung sila ang mananalo. Yun po ang aking nais na bigyan ng emphasis dito.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. David. Susundan ito, of course, Professor Walden Bello.
Sige, titindig rin ako. Again, maraming salamat sa De La Salle University at mga iba pang mga sponsors. Unang-una, in the time remaining before May 9, I would urge the youth to force Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte to participate in the debates. The country needs to know what they stand for, and they are thinking at this point na, wow, we can get away with not presenting our programs to the people. Now we can get away with just big motherhood statements, let's get together, national amnesia. Ito yung base ng programa nila. We cannot let them get away with it. And the youth must really organize to force these two jokers to appear before you and bring their program. And not only their program for youth, but their whole program before you so that you can judge. Insulto ho sa inyo. Insulto sa youth yung hindi sila nag-appear sa mga debates. This is really the ultimate insult to the voters. So, I would challenge you to let these people not get away with it. Am I, President, ready? Well, I hope nothing happens to Leody de Guzman if we're elected to office. But I guess if there's a military coup because we're going to be tagged as a leftist government, well, I'll probably be with Leody at the barricades, and you know what's going to happen to us. Okay. So, am I President ready? Yes, I think so. I would not be running for the Vice President at this point. Hindi lang ho ako spare tire.
Thank you so much, Professor Bello. Last words from Mr. Manny Lopez.
First, I'd like to thank the De La Salle studentry and faculty for giving us this opportunity to share our vision, our mission, and our program of government. Marami pong salamat sa inyong lahat at sa mga iba't ibang nag-participate to give us this wonderful opportunity to share our thoughts and ideas on how to make a better Philippines, a just, strong, and a progressive nation that is worthy of respect and adulation from all peoples of the world. Ngayon po, on the question of am I President ready? First and foremost, I would like to state that I am fully committed to support and extend whatever assistance that is necessary to help the next duly elected President of our Republic to ensure the delivery of his promises, the policies and programs that will help uplift the lives of our country and our people. Yan po ang aking minimum commitment, to help uplift the lives of our country and our people. Yan po ang aking pinakamalaking rason bakit ako ay tumatayo ngayon sa harap ninyo. At kayo po, ang kabataan, ang siyang magpapatupad ng kung anuman ang kinakailangan upang matuwid natin ang mga suliranin, ang mga issues na haharapin natin in the coming years, because we are facing an unprecedented crisis, and there is no way that we could fix this country by sticking to the old systems, old policies and practices that we have witnessed and that really never uplifted the lives of our long-suffering people. And with that, I challenge.
Thank you so much, Mr. Manny Lopez.
And last but not the least, Attorney Serapio.
Una po, paumanin ko, ako'y nakasalamin ng madilim dahil nasisilaw po ako. Salamat Lasal, salamat sa inyong partners, salamat sa pinakadakilang lumalang sa pagkakataong binigay sa amin na ihain ang aming sarili para po sa pagkilatis ng mga kabataan sa ngayon ng bagong henerasyon. Tatlo po ang dahilan kung bakit po ako naghain ng aking sarili matapos ako nakapaglingkod sa halos 5 mga presidente sa iba't ibang pagkakataon sa aking pakikipag-ugnayan sa kanila. Una po, naniniwala ako na dapat isali sa usapin ng pagbabago ang pinakadakilang lumalang sapagkat kung hindi natin masagot sa ngayon kung saan nagmumula ang ating suliranin, tao ba o sistema, ang dahilan po niyan ay dahil yung karunungan na ibinibigay ng pinakadakilang lumalang at ang kanyang liwanag ay hindi pa natin lubos na nagagagap na sa bawat isa po sa atin na nakaluklok ang kapangyarihan na iyan. Pangalawa po, upang himukin ang aking henerasyon katulad nila Professor Walden, nila Rizalito, nila Manny, na magkasama-sama nga po kami na gamitin ang aming karanasan para maging batayan, para maunawaan ninyo kung ano nga po ba ang kalagayan ng ating bansa sa ngayon. Nalulungkot po ako na yung mga usapin ng mga kabataan at mga estudyante noon, militarisasyon sa mga eskwelahan, yung tungkol sa tuition fee, tungkol sa kagalingan ng mga estudyante, hanggang sa ngayon po, iyon pa rin po ang pinag-uusapan. 50 taon na ang nakalilipas. Kung pag-aaralan pa po nyo sana ang kasaysayan ng aktivismo ng mga estudyante rito, mas magiging malalim ang inyong pagkakagagap. Huwag na po kayong pumasok doon sa aming pinasukan ng mga kamalian at aming mga kinaluksakan. Kaya nga po ang tanong ko lagi, yung lagi kong sinasabi, tuwing ako nagsasalita, bato po ba tayo ay itlog? Pag bato, iba lang ang hugis. Pag itlog, napipisa para sa tunay na pagbabago. External and internal. Iyan po ang dapat nating pag-isipan. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po, Attorney Carlos Serapio. Binigyan din po natin ang pagkakataon ng mga hindi nakarating ngayong hapon, ngayong gabi, para magbigay ng kanilang mga closing statement sa pamamagitan ng pre-recorded video.
Narito ang mensahe ni Congressman Lito Atienza.
Ang sabi nila, ang Vice President daw dapat ready mag-take over, maging presidente kung kinakailangan ng pagkakataon. Ang tanong sa amin ay, ready na ba kayo, Deputy Speaker? Ang sagot ko dyan ay simple. Si Manny Pacquiao, maraming pinagpilian sino ang kanyang aanyayahan maging Vice President niya. Ang talagang pumasok doon ang pumasok sa isipan niya ay ang kaibigan mong matagal na. A friend for 22 years, Lito Atienza. He has 52 years experience in government. He was mayor for 9 years. He has been in all the critical posts in government. Cabinet member, member of parliament, member of Congress, mayor, vice mayor. Tama naman siya. And sabi niya, importante, yung politika mo, pareho ng politika ko. I've been looking at you. You have no corruption case left in wherever you serve. And to me, that's important. Because corruption-free government will give our people a better life. I am committed to God and country, to fight corruption and prevent corruption from continuing in the Philippines. You are the only one who can be my vice president and who can be president if needed be. That convinced me. Hindi na kami nagtalo pa. Sabi ko, I will join you for breakfast tomorrow. Please. Because we will now file our certificates of candidacy. So, ready? Deep within me, I know that I am. The trust of Manny Pacquiao shows God's contentment with what I have done in government. And I commit to you.
Maraming salamat po, Congressman Lito Atienza. Narito naman ang mensahe ni Senador Kiko Pangilinan.
Bakit kinakailangan magkaroon ng gobyernong tapat? Sabi ng COA, tinatayang 700 billion kada taon simula noong 2019 ang nawawala sa kaban ng bayan dahil sa katiwalian. Hindi birong halaga na mapupunta sa lahat ng dapat gastusan. Pagkain, edukasyon, tirahan, kalusugan, climate change mitigation efforts. Sabi nga, the supreme quality of leadership is integrity. At sino ang may track record na pamumunong di nasangkot sa anumang kaso ng korupsyon? Walang iba yan kung hindi ang Robredo Pangilinan tandem. Noong tayo ay naging Presidential Food Security Secretary, noong panahon ni President Noynoy Aquino, nakatipid tayo sa gobyerno ng 7 billion pesos sa loob lamang ng isang taon at kalahati dahil ni-reject natin sa unang pagkakataon sa NFA history ang presyong mataas na imported na Thai and Vietnam rice. Ang gusto natin, ang Pilipinas para sa Pilipino, hindi sa iba. Gusto natin ang namumuno na ang puso ay sa Pilipino, hindi sa dayuhan. Gusto natin may laman pa ang kaban ng bayan para sa pagkain, pag-aaral at pagpapagamot. Hindi yung napupunta sa pagpapayaman, sa family, o kaya sa pagbibili ng Lamborghini. Gusto nating gobyernong tapat, ngayon pa lamang at hindi yung pinapangako pa lang. Kaya naman napakataba o nakakataba ng ating puso ang nakikita natin na kayo na mismo ang masigasig na naga-house to house. Salamat mga frontliner sa kampanya ng 10-7 sa balota. Mabuhay ang kabataang Pilipino, mabuhay ang sambayanang Pilipinas. Animo Lasal.
All right, thank you so much to our candidates for their closing statements. This brings Pili Mo, Pili Ko, Pilipino, the Youth Vote 2022 Vice Presidential Forum to a close. Let's once again acknowledge and thank our Vice Presidential candidates who joined us today.
Thank you so much, Professor Walden Bello, Mr. Rizalito David, Mr. Manny S.D. Lopez, and Attorney Carlos Serapio. Again, let's give them all a round of applause.
Maraming salamat po sa pagtindig at pagpapakita sa ating forum. We'd also like to take this chance to thank our organizers and partners, De La Salle University Committee on National Issues and Concerns, Participate, La Salle Institute of Governance, Youth-Led, Lasallian Justice and Peace Commission, Ateneo School of Government, Ateneo Policy Center, and Rappler.
Higit sa lahat, nagpapasalamat kami sa napakaraming kabataan na nakasama namin ngayon dito sa venue, sa live streaming ng Rappler at yung mga nag-participate sa amin research at nagpadala ng mga videos nila. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pakikibahagi sa ating forum.
Bilang pagtatapos, iimbitahan natin on stage ang Vice President for Internal Affairs of the De La Salle University Student Government, Ms. Britney Paredes. Kasama si
Lara Homalesa, Vice President for External Affairs, para basahin ang isang commitment pledge mula sa ating mga kabataan na sana ay pakinggan, sangayunan at pirmahan ng ating mga kandidato ngayong gabing ito. Ms. Britney and Ms. Lara.
All right, thank you so much. So to our vice presidential candidates, may I kindly ask for you to stand up and raise your right hand. on behalf of the De La Salle student body, we ask the following from our candidates. Following the Lasallian framework of Masiddanas, Suri Nilay, and Tayakilos, the Lasallian youth has watched other countries actively respond to the same issues, progressively coming closer to normalcy, while our government intentionally withholds the solutions that our country is clearly capable of and more deeply is in dire need of. We hold that Filipinos deserve leaders who strive to work on protecting and governing their citizens with competence and integrity. As such, for the candidates who wish to lead the country, we, the Lasallian youth, urge you to consider the call of the youth. First, prioritize lobbying for a COVID-19 pandemic recovery response that addresses multi-sectoral issues that have worsened with the onset of the pandemic. Second, fight for the educational sector, the students, the teachers, and non-academic staff in the preparation and eventual transition for the safe reopening of on-site classes. Third, call for the improvement of the healthcare system of the Philippines to further develop the infrastructure for healthcare and lobby for the hazard pay of healthcare workers who have been working tirelessly during this whole pandemic. Fourth, recognize the increasing living cost by standing firmly against price hikes and salary cuts, which are caused by the inflated economy of the country. Fifth, uphold transparency in all government units and support the investigation and punishment of corrupt government officials. Six, reinforce the Philippine sovereignty and territorial integrity by protecting our territory, Filipino seamen, and fishermen from alien trespassers. Lastly, support the call for a clean, fair, and honest election this May 2022. Win or lose, I commit to recognizing the youth as a legitimate social sector that must always be involved, heard, and considered.
Thank you, Brittany and Lara. May we now call on our candidates for the signing of the pledge.
All right, thank you so much to the USG and of course, sa mga candidates natin, promise po yan ha. Tutuloy-tuloy po natin ang mga pinangako natin. Muli po, palakpakan natin ang ating mga vice presidential candidates.
Okay, now may we ask everybody to stand for our closing prayer. To lead us in this prayer, may we call on stage Ashley Sensico, a volunteer from DLSU Coscalov.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear God, I pray that you help and guide all Filipinos that we may have an honest, truthful, fair, and peaceful elections. I also pray that you help and guide all Filipinos, especially the youth, to make the right decision on who to vote for as our future leaders. I also pray that you help and guide all Filipinos to strive to always be the best people that they can be, to always be kind and compassionate to each other, to always stand for truth and integrity, to fight for freedom and the rights of all Filipinos for our sake and for the sake of future generations. And last, dear God, I pray that you heal and protect our country and everybody from harm, illness, poverty, hunger, and wars. Thank you, dear God. In Jesus, Mary, and all the saints' name, I pray. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Alright, maraming salamat po. Dito na po nagtatapos ang ating forum. Thank you so much to all of you, to the organizers. Congratulations. Once again, I'm Jules Giang from Rappler.
At ako naman si Audrey Garin from De La Salle University. At dito na po nagtatapos ang Pili Mo, Pili Ko, Filipino, the Youth Vote 2022 Vice Presidential Forum.
Sir.